Valmiki was a contemporary of Rama, and you can see a lot of things which are very close to Rig Veda. For example, Valmiki compares Rama to Indra. At least 7 times more than he is compared
Yes.
to Vishnu. The entire concept of Vishnu Bhakti, the devotion to Vishnu, that is not very popular at that time. We finally reached to the Islamic invasion period, and that is the period in which Ramacharita is authored. So when you have that entire cultural context of that period is because we had a lot of Islamic invasions, and the people were completely battered with a lot of painful events like destruction of temples. So that time you have the poets like Tulsidas and others authoring just to energize the society which is completely battered and defeated. So they need to be energized with the ancient heroes. So then that is the kind of context and environment in which Ramacharita has emerged. This Purana corpus, which is larger than Mahabharata, this is authored after 1750 BC. Or if you don't focus on the chronology, it is authored after Kurukshetra War. Major chunk of the Puranas are authored during the Sunga and Gupta period. Because a lot of materials that you are seeing in the Sunga, in the Puranas, they have signature of Sunga and Gupta period. At that time, they have inserted certain information into the Ramayana and Mahabharata. That is the Puranic material. The material of the Puranas got inserted back into the Ramayana and Mahabharata, such a way that it looks contemporary to Ramayan. This is how the Yuga system, very famous thing, where we say there was Krita Yuga, then Treta Yuga, then Dwapara, then Kali Yuga. I mean, it's okay to have these yugas, but the size of the yugas, like the total duration of the Chaturyuga as 43 lakhs 20,000. These are all Sunga Gupta period creations, and then projecting that Rama have lived in that particular large lakhs and lakhs of years, large Treta Yuga, the end of Treta Yuga Rama lived. So when you look from the lens of Guptas and Sungas, our prehistory become exaggerated to a kind of maybe 1,000 times larger. This is where the unnecessary conflict of Sanatana Dharma with science started.
In this episode of Discovery of an Author, we again sit down with Mr. Jijith Nadumuri Ravi. With Mr. Jijith, we had earlier done an episode on the secrets of Rig Veda, which I think was revelatory in the way, a lot of concepts and misconceptions about Rig Veda were revealed. But in this podcast, it's my very humble request that please, first of all, listen to this podcast with a very open mind. Because in this episode, we have very scientifically and with a lot of evidences, Mr. Jijith has revealed mind-blowing facts about Ramayana. Starting from the location of Lanka, to the location of all the important places, to the use of nuclear weapons in Ramayana, to the magical powers of Hanuman, to the existence of Vimanas or the actual definition of Vimanas, about the Ravana, about Rakshasa, about Vanaras, about the clans, everything. This is a very powerful episode because I think it really tells in a very scientific way the reality of Ramayana, the reality of Lord Rama, and how it all happened, and the way in which it all happened, the geographies in which it happened, and what exactly transpired in the era of Ramayana. A very powerful episode. The some of the various facts that were shared on this episode will blow your mind. I was in for a ride. I was in for a surprise. And I'm sure you guys are going to absolutely love this episode. Watch this episode till the very end and you'll be amazed with the facts that you'll get to know on and around Ramayana. And guys, it's a very, very, very humble request that please subscribe to this channel. Consider it my plea that please, this is the only way in which we can grow. It costs you nothing. All you have to do is hit that subscribe icon. Please do it. Please do it. Enjoy this episode. Thank you. Mr. Jijith, the recording has started. Mr. Jijith, thank you again for coming back on Discovery of an Author podcast. I think the first, I have to say something to you. And I really want people to also hear that. The first episode that we did on the rivers of Rigveda, lot of mixed reactions, and I was happy. I mean, I'm fine with everything. It's not as if I always need praises. So many mixed reactions came our way. So now we are back with your second book in the series, that is Geography of Ramayana, and it was unbelievable for me. There are so many things that I feel that people should know. I think a lot of people are gonna get upset with this episode, 100%. Because the image of Ramayana that we have right now, that you see in TV series and movies and everything, I think that is not Valmiki Ramayana.
Yes.
That is the more bhakti movement oriented content that we see, wherein Ram is Lord Ram. Lord Ram is this divine being without any human traits and flaws and faults, and nothing can go wrong, and pious, and it's full of magic. It's full of as you have mentioned in the book, poetic imagination, Puranic imagination, and everything. And because we have had so many iterations of Ramayana in pop culture, even to talk about such things, it's very difficult. But that is why we are here. And your book was beautiful, Mr. Jijith. I again would like to tell people that your book, it is so scientifically explained. Everything is referenced so beautifully. That's what adds to the weightage of the work that you're doing, and that is why we are here. And I really appreciate that you have written this great book. It demystifies a lot of things about Ramayana. So, Mr. Jijith, what we'll do, we have created a system. We have created a framework. So I thought I'll just tell you that framework that we're going to follow. And this is the framework that we're going to follow for all of our episodes now. The framework that we have created is, we are calling it the FATE, F-A-T-E, FATE framework. So what is the FATE framework? We divide our questions into 4 verticals. F starts for foundation, wherein we first try to understand the foundation of any subject. Where is the author coming from? Why this book? Explain the definitions before we can go deep dive. That is a FATE, that is a F framework. Then we move on to the A framework, which is the analysis, wherein we go deep dive into the book. A large chunk of the questions fall under the umbrella of analytical framework, wherein we take the quotes from the book, what is written, ask questions, go really deep into it. The T vertical of the FATE framework is the takeaway. What is a takeaway? Kind of like conclusions that you also have in a book, a lot of other books have. And the E framework is evidences. So evidences, why? Because what we have talked about, one, definitely you can read the book of the author on which we have discussed. And if there are more references or paperworks or books that the author would want people, if somebody is interested in going deep dive and really want to go into it, and we would be referencing these things in the description. Because this FATE framework that we have created, we're going to follow the same framework over here. It will add a lot of weightage, and people will have a lot of clarity of how the entire discussions are moving and the approach that we are also taking. I'm going to start with the first question. And again, we are going to try to lay first some foundations before we can move ahead. Okay. Geography of Ramayana. I first want you to explain the word and the meaning of the word Itihasa. And why is Ramayana called an Itihasa? But also it is in a form of a poem composed by a sage, Valmiki. So first explain what is Itihasa, then explain why it is also a poem composed by sage Valmiki, so that we can understand that how to bracket this text. Over to you, sir. Sorry for the interruption, but our YouTube statistics show that around 65% of all of you who are consistently consuming our episodes are not subscribing to our channel. So this is my request to all of those who do enjoy our content and are finding value in it, to please subscribe to our channel. This is the only way in which we can grow. Thank you, and please continue watching and listening to this episode.
Yes. So after writing the book, The Rivers of Rigveda, where the information is more structured, etc. Then the subsequent text that is on the Valmiki Ramayana, definitely it is an Itihasa. So we need to first tell to the viewers so that what is that meaning. So the one of the important aspect that I have put in the introductory chapters of the book itself is to define the Itihasa. So basically, it is kind of an expression which means that it has happened like this. That is, Itihasa means it happened like this, or this is how it happened. So, if you want to compare it with, it is something equivalent to the modern news reporting, where the reporter says, "Oh, this is how it happened." But today, you have ability to basically have it in a complete video footages or at least audio footages, etc. But in the ancient period, it is basically that these reporters they are basically the information gatherers of that ancient period, but they were the rishis and they were the poets. So the same methodology you can see in the Iliad and Odyssey, in the Greek world as well. So what we basically happening when you are actually recording and the day-to-day events or the current event of the lifetime. So there will be a rishi for in this case of Valmiki Ramayana, that is basically Valmiki, who have ventured into collecting information. So definitely we know that Valmiki was not walking along with the Rama or Sita all the time, but of course he had a lot of kind of interaction with Rama and Sita in their lifetime. Which again within Valmiki Ramayana, it's slightly glimpse where it's very passingly mentions about a 10-year life during Rama's lifetime inside the forest. So very passingly it mentions that there are he has met so many Rishi Munis, but once you triangulate the information in the Valmiki Ramayana, it's very clear they have also stayed in the ashrama of Valmiki. So the Valmiki is basically having some first-hand information of life of Rama and Sita. And after that, after Rama's coronation and he living with Sita, and then this unfortunate event of banishment of Sita happened. So again, Sita was back into Valmiki's ashrama. So again, he gets the information. So basically, this time it is from this Sita as the source of information. He gets a lot of information. So we actually have a glimpse of how Valmiki, who is a contemporary to Sri Rama, have gathered information about his lifetime and all the major events that has happened in the life of Rama and Sita. So this is the one aspect of Itihasa when compared to the if you make a comparison with the Puranas, this is one aspect that the person reporting it or the person who is collecting this information is contemporary to the events. So in case of Valmiki Ramayana, it is Valmiki who is contemporary to Rama and Sita. In case of Mahabharata, then Vyasa happen to be that individual. And this is the basic aspect of Itihasa. It is contemporary. It is just happening in front of you. And there are many witnesses who are collecting it, and there will be a main person who will be assembling it all together into an Itihasa. Now, the second question is why it is a poetry. So, basically, in the ancient period, when there is no writing systems, which is, I would currently say that writing system existed, but not very popular, at least not for recording huge amount of information like Rigveda, now contained in Rigveda, Ramayana, or Mahabharata. So in that situation, everything has to be orally transmitted. So in the ancient period, not only history, which is basically Itihasa, is actually a kind of ancient form of the history. So not only history, mathematics, science, any kind of knowledge in not just history but also scientific knowledge, everything is passed on. Mathematical knowledge, everything is passed as a poetry. So that is why when you read Leelavati of this mathematical text, it's all in poetic. It's all in poetry basically. So there is poetic meter and there is a structure and you can remember it. So poetry can be by hearted, and that is how you can orally transmit the information. It could be historical information, it could be mathematical information, it could be scientific information. But in case of Valmiki or of Vyasa, they were passing on historical information, and that to contemporary history. in comparison to Purana, which talks about past history. That's the word Purana itself. It means something that happened in the past. That is how the difference between the Itihasa and Purana. And I have actually compared it with the third category, that is the Rig Veda and the Vedas, which have a different methodology of passing on information. So there are three categories: the Vedic information, Itihasic information, and Puranic information.
So basically, what you're saying is that Ramayana is categorically an itihasa. That means it is a historical fact. Sorry,
Yes,
an historical event that
yes, yes,
happened, and that means there were protagonists like Ram, Sita, Lakshman, Dashrath, everybody, Ravan present in our
yes.
ancient Indian geography at a given time period, and Valmiki was also present in the same time period, and that is why he was able to know about the happenings, talk to people about that, gather information. So, Sita, being one source of information for Valmiki, he must have spoken with a lot of other people as well, just like how
Yes.
research gets done. You go, you talk to people, you gather information, then you compose. So, that is one form of itihasa. In the modern times, let's say you
Yeah.
pick up a history book, okay, let's
Mhm.
say you pick up the accounts of King Ashok, or you pick up the accounts of Napoleon, of his conquests.
Yes.
If I pick up a book about Napoleon, for example, or Samrat Ashok, for example, and if I find that apart from the prose there are a lot of poems and poetic elements, my mind would dismiss it as not being historical, because
Ah,
you do not associate poetry with something
yes.
serious, because you can take the poetic imagination, you can take the creative liberty that you cannot do when you're writing a prose, that you cannot do when you're writing a biography or
Mhm.
accounts. So
Yes.
these texts are so rich in poetic imaginations as well, because you have
Right.
also
Right.
mentioned in a book somewhere that Valmiki was like the first ancient sci-fi writer.
Right. Right. Yes.
It's very confusing, Mr. Jijit, because I'm see, I always tell people that I do come from a very skeptic background. That does not mean that I do not believe. Why I ask such questions is that so that I can get the best of the answer. If I just
Mhm.
accept everything, there is no point, right? So I have to have the skeptical point of view. I try to understand. I really want to know its place. How then, and we'll come to this thing later. I'm just saying that how then there are a lot of poetic imaginations as a part of history. Then we also think that he might be a writer who had, used various PIs, as you have mentioned. But there are certain geographical facts also embedded in the Ramayana. It's a very
Mhm.
complicated, I think it's a very complicated nut to crack to say it
Mhm.
with authority ki yes, 100% history. This is exactly what happened, because the text sometimes would not allow you to.
Right. Right. So I got a clear answer in the book. The It is the different approach that the rishis like Valmiki Ramayana who authored Itihasa, they use a different approach for the textual preservation. So, in case of Rig Veda, it has history, it has geography, but they didn't do anything like creating some exaggerations or some kind of imagination, poetic imaginations, etc. Very rare in the Rig Veda, because there was another method of preserving the text orally, which involves a very strict pronunciation, shiksha, and there is another entire methodology was developed like vyakarana, that is grammar, shiksha for pronunciation, then nirukta for etymology, and then chandas, that is the poetic meter. So vedangas are actually created basically to preserve the information in Rig Veda and other Vedas. So they actually had, there is no need of any poetical imagination so that it become captivating, because already you have shiksha, you have chandas, you have vyakarana, and other methods like nirukta, that is etymology, so that there is a multi-dimensional, I would say four-dimensional methodology of preserving the information content inside the Rig Veda. And because of this, anybody that is guru, from guru to shishya, based on these multidimensional preservation methodologies, all the information inside the Rig Veda will remain intact, even if it is orally transmitted for multiple generations. So, 100 years, four generations, like that. It has been transmitted for more than 4,000 years. 4,000 years, which it involves for no for 4 into 4, so around uh, it's around 16,000, no, that number of generations, like 100 years, 4. So you can calculate, no, I think 160 generations, more than that,
Hmm.
will be there. But in case of Valmiki, Ramayana, and Mahabharata, the Itihasas, they didn't do any kind of such preservation technologies, no, something like shiksha. There is no pronunciation based no methodologies used for reciting Mahabharata or Ramayana. These were transmitted by sutas, Suta Pauranikas. So compared to the Vedas, which are actually transmitted by highly educated Brahmanas who are into experts into the Nirukta and Shiksha and Vyakarana and Chandas. This is very like slightly casually transmitted by the Sutas, and so they didn't use any of such preservation technologies. So, but they did one thing is that this the original authors themselves started the trend. That is Valmiki and Vyasa themselves started the trend of creating Atishayakti. The Sanskrit word for it is Atishayakti or exaggerations. So once you have exaggerations, then the listener will be just attached to it. They will be captivated by the narrative. And that increases the possibility of it getting orally transmitted to the next generation. So this is why the poetic imagination inside the Ramayana and Mahabharata were essential for preserving the text.
So it is kind of like an
For
ancient way of clickbait on something which
correct.
actually happened.
Yes, yes, yes.
They knew the fact that what we are
Mhm.
presenting is not fantasy, it is based in realism, but we
Right.
want more people to know about it. So let us
Absolutely.
create some clickbaitish thumbnails and titles
Yes.
and let's get them attracted, because once they are attracted, they
Right.
are in for facts. They are
Yes.
in for, because that is where I, when I was going through the entire book, that is where I also got confused. And I was saying in my head, if you remove all the poetic imaginations and the sci-fi stuff and the fantasies which you have also from the equation and leave the entire story as it is, very relatable. Obviously it could have happened. It could have happened in any country. There were conflicts between tribes, and the protagonist in question in this time was a prince of a kingdom. Very, very similar to what happened with Siddharth Gautama. Just because he was the prince, when he became an ascetic, the word spread like wildfire. That there is a prince, a son of a king, who is now trying to become an ascetic. So it obviously spreads. There were a lot of Buddhas, but why he got a lot of marketing was that because he was a royal lineage. Same with Rama. He was the king of he was a son of firstborn of Dashrath. So if you keep all of these things aside and just take the story as it is, very relatable, very understandable. But I also agree. I think they wanted more and more people to consume, read, and for this story to spread, because
Yeah.
maybe they found some very strong values and philosophies embedded, or maybe they just wanted the world to know the existing state of the Indian civilization of Aryavarta, that what was happening.
Yeah, there is the purpose of the Itihasa is also very clearly defined, especially in the Mahabharata, which is a second Itihasa, so that a lot of thought process has also gone into the Itihasa itself. Whereas Ramayana is the Adi Kavya, so being the first Itihasa, all the aspects of the Itihasas are not very clearly defined. So there, the Rishi's purpose was actually to explain Dharma.
Yeah.
And this is the one difference I see compared to the historical methodologies used in the West. In India, the history is being taught, or the interest in the history is because there are elements which are time invariant. There are messages of dharma which you can transmit to any new century. So that is why because basically there are historical events that has happened in the Ayodhya and all the way up to the Lanka in the city of Ravana. So there are certain morals and certain ideals that we can anybody can emulate from the narrative. That is the reason why a prince in Ayodhya no, it was become very important, and Valmiki thought of no, recording the events in the life of Rama and Sita and turning it into an Itihasa Kavya and like Valmiki Ramayana and presenting to us. Whereas in the modern Western methodology of historical analysis is only talking focused on the accuracy of the dates, exactly how many days from this point to that point. No, this is all their concern. They are not concerned about any moral values or anything. Now, if you say the Russia attacked Ukraine or Ukraine attacked Russia, what is the moral? There is no moral they are talking about. They're just recording certain events. So I would say it is something similar to the dance in Europe and Bharatanatyam in India. You can see how much complex and how much elegant and beautiful the Bharatanatyam is compared with just some body movements in Europe. A similar way, or the music, classical music that we have in India versus some howling, Western howling that you can see in the Western music. So we have some sophistication and some inner beauty in whatever we do. So whether it is music, whether it is dance. So when we authored history, then definitely that kind of a complexity and some kind of more nuance existed in Indian way of authoring history, and that is what Valmiki and Vyasa have done.
Makes sense. Mr. Jijith, now the second thing which I want to understand, again, it's a part of the fundamental part of it. Why was Sage Valmiki, what was he looking for in a subject? What was he searching to write on? And why did he ask a question to, I think, Sage Narada, that I am looking for a specific thing? Because what I want to know, why did Valmiki compose or write? He could have written about anything. It was a vast land with many tribes, with many communities, such a vast land. He could have written on any subject if he was trying to find a subject. What fascinated him towards this individual called Ram, and where did he get to know? How did that formulation happen? So I want to know why Ramayana.
There are certain information that also very vaguely mentioned in the Uttarkanda, etc., where it says that there are certain relationship between Valmiki and the royal dynasty of Ayodhya. That is very clear. Something similar to Vyasa's connections with the Pandavas and the Kuru dynasty. Because there is a mention about Valmiki being a kind of friend of Dasharatha. So there are certain familiarity, and of course, the Valmiki Ashrama is not very far from the entire domain, the territory of Kashi Kosala. So the asrama will automatically fall into the Kosala plus Kashi. So it's a kind of a dual kingdom of Kosala and Kashi. So geographically there is a closeness of Valmiki Asrama with Ayodhya, and there is some kind of a remote relationship of Valmiki being some kind of acquaintance of Dasharatha, etc. So having said that, we can the real reason where the Valmiki got fascinated by Rama are the two things. One is, of course, in the Balakanda, where there is a conversation with Narada, where he asks like who basically that is I would consider that is a kind of introduction into the book. Even though Valmiki assumes that he ignorance about Rama and basically asking Narada and Narada telling about this. The qualities, the best qualities of Rama, but that is actually a kind of a textual introduction, I would say. But historically, if you look at the Prince Rama was automatically fascinating because he has actually captivated the attention of the rishis in the very beginning itself. For example, the time when Rama was about to be coronated into to the Ayodhya as a Yuvaraja, the heir to the heir apparent. So that event become well known into the rishis who are living in Dandakaranya, because there is a prince who is supposed to be a Yuvaraja on the next day, but suddenly there are certain turn of events in the palace where his father Dasharatha have a kind of conversation with the second wife Kaikeyi, and she actually forced him to uh, get a agree. I mean, they will say boon, but basically forced him to agree on sending Rama to the forest and making her own son Bharata into the Yuvaraja of Ayodhya. And so the kind of amount of U-turn or the amount of surprise and shock is tremendous. And then the way Rama has accepted it, so without any perturbation, and the way he has very easily, something like a rishi, he has very effortlessly relinquished that position and was ready to go to the forest. And this kind of a behavior is very much similar to the behavior of a rishi or a person who have a kind of elevated consciousness. The people who are the elevated consciousness, so they don't really care about or they will be able to come above the material gains and sudden loss of the materials that they were supposed to get. So with that, he has absorbed that shock very quickly and then was ready to leave to the forest and hand over the that position to his younger brother without any complaint. And this has qualities of a rishi, is qualities of a higher consciousness, and this automatically gets something like a signal to the rishis that there is a person like this, and he is worth to be talked about.
Yeah.
That is the starting point.
Yeah, something not heard of in those times, specifically
Yeah.
when someone gets the option of becoming the king. And
Yes.
then, even at that time, if you're able to hold on to your moral grounds and, more important than moral, your sense of dharma. I
Yes.
think his sense of dharma, I think he revolutionized dharma. He exemplified dharma the way it is supposed to be in the
Yes.
most idealistic form. And I think that is why he was called Purush Uttama.
Right.
Maryada Purushottama, the way of the man. I mean, it's like
Yes.
his entire conduct was very supreme,
Hmm.
something that people would love to emulate. And I think
Right. Right.
and I think that's how things become from emulation to adoration to avatarhood. I mean,
Right.
that's
Exactly.
in a way how the progression could have happened. That
Yeah.
we, uh,
So this will be definitely creating shockwaves across the community of the rishis and of the kings, because for the rishis he is a person who is having ascetic qualities,
yeah,
and he is in all respect he is now already become an avatara when he had relinquished that throne and decided to go to the forest. So he has the qualities of ascetic, he has the qualities of an avatara, he has qualities. Avatara is basically higher consciousness, basically.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the way you have to understand it.
yeah,
And if you look at the entire the both, if you have because anyway, my books, you know that it is a comparative. It's not just that Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Rigveda, but they are all cross compared. So you can see so much of impact of Rama into the life of Pandu, for example,
yeah,
because he was also effortlessly relinquishing the throne. And same thing you can see in Yudhishthira also. That whenever situation comes, he doesn't mind to throw away the kingdom and go to the forest. So basically, this because that till the time of Rama, the kings were really fighting for throne, right? They have never heard about something like this, that a prince will
yes,
relinquish a throne and then just like that effortlessly go to the forest. So it create a huge psychological impact on the kings, and they will definitely think about their own behaviors, at least the generations of Rama's generation and maybe two or three generation later to Rama, this impact will be continuing. That kind of precedence that Rama has set has been continuing, and that we can see in Mahabharata. In fact, I really have noted about it in my third book, that how Pandu is influenced by Rama and how Yudhishthira got influenced by Rama. Actually. So then it gives an kind of very important reason why an Itihasa or a history about Rama has to be authored.
absolutely. And I think giving the throne without any ulterior motive. And once
Yes.
you get to know that this man, and you said very interesting thing about Avatar, Mr. Jijit, ki it's nothing but higher consciousness. So I also believe you're absolutely right. I think Avatarhood is just the descent of a higher consciousness.
Right.
Rather than some supreme entity descending, it's like a consciousness of some higher realm got descended into our plane
Yes.
in some
Yes.
individual, or some individual was able to get up to that consciousness. Whatever
Right.
works, you can ascend, something can descend, and then you can act from that consciousness on this level. I think that's a very beautiful
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
definition of consciousness. And
So the avatara meaning itself is descent.
oh,
So how it is getting explained in the Vedantic literature is that it is a descent of a higher consciousness.
Lord Vishnu.
So yeah. So the Lord, even the Vishnu, that is exactly when described in the Rig Veda, is a kind of expanding principle. So basically, it's a consciousness expansion, and once the supreme consciousness uh, observe or not a kind of a worthy human consciousness which is capable of containing that higher level consciousness, that consciousness descend into that individual, and that person becomes an avatar for the rest of the people. That's what happens here.
Mr. Jijit, before we move ahead, there is one more fundamental question that is very, very important that I think people need to know. Is so in the okay, I'll divide it into two parts. Part one, what is the difference between sage Valmiki's Ramayan and the Ram Charitramanas of Tulsidasa?
Right, right.
Very
So,
important for people to understand.
because see, Valmiki was a contemporary of Rama, and you can see a lot of things which are very close to Rig Veda. For example, Valmiki compares Rama to Indra, multiple, I mean, at least 7 times more than he is compared
Yes,
to Vishnu.
yes,
So the period of Valmiki and Rama is very close to the Rig Vedic period. Of course, in chronologically, we get Rama is mentioned in the 10th mandal of the Rig Veda. So chronologically, whatever we are telling in terms of psychological or sociological aspects that we observe, like Rama is more compared more with Indra than with Vishnu. So there is automatically chronologically also we get it. So basically it reinforces our understanding like sociological as well as chronologically that the period was very closer to Rigvedic period. And then at that time, the basic aspect of the society was that Indra is the god who is a role model for all the kings, and the king perform his duties and activities by taking Indra as the role model. And there are two role models, kings. That is, one is Indra and Varuna. So Varuna is the king of Kshema, which means that he's ruling from a capital city and take care of all the welfare of his subjects. Where Indra is the king of yoga, but of course yoga also may have a meaning of war, conflict. So this particular king, the second king of a kingdom, his main objective is to roam around the periphery of the kingdom and fight with any kind of opposition. So basically, king of yoga is in the boundaries. So that is why we see Rama is roaming around in Dandakaranya, and many of the rishis call him, in literally call him that you are our king, in the sense that he is the king of yoga, and he is basically his interest is in protecting the people who are living in the boundaries, etc. So this entire society is very close to the Rigvedic period. There was no idea, there is no concept of devotion, bhakti, all these things in that period. Of course, there is a devotion that is to the Indra, but there is the entire concept of Vishnu Bhakti, the devotion to Vishnu, that is not very popular at that time. But if you look at the Ramacharita, so we had after Rama's lifetime, we had the Mauryan period. So in the towards the Mauryan period, where we have the Indo-Greek kingdoms left over by the Alexander. So some of these Indo-Greek kings become Vaishnava devotees. So the first evidence of Vaishnavism, that is worship of Vishnu, all of them we get very close to the Mauryan period or the post-Alexander invasion period from the Greek coins. So definitely, it doesn't see. It is the first evidence that we get. The first evidence of coins related to Krishna and Balarama, or the first evidence of worshipping of Vishnu. So all these are like it is very strange, but mostly the Yavanas are the very first devotees of Vishnu that we get in history. But of course, we can take back some 100 or 200 or 500 years if you want. That time a lot of Bharatiyas have already become Vishnu Bhaktas. So what I would basically saying is that chronologically, if you look at the worship of Vishnu has increased after the Mahabharata Kurukshetra war period, with very important role played by Krishna himself. That, of course, most of it, as I have mentioned in my third book, Geography of Mahabharata, how Krishna became kind of an impactful personality who became the seed for that, defining the Vishnu of the Puranas. So that is another matter. So maybe we'll deal with in the third book. But ultimately, the historically and chronologically, we have a kind of very clear understanding that Vaishnava traditions emerged after the Kurukshetra war. So when once Vaishnava traditions are, like emerged, then a lot of ancient personalities like Parashurama or Sri Rama, Sri Krishna, all of them are elevated as Vaishnava avatars. So this is basically a kind of a transformation that the general avatara concept, elevation, the consciousness, descent of the consciousness is understood as a descent of Vaishnava consciousness. So I don't really, think that some people will say that this is like the usurpation of the concept by the Vaishnava. So I don't really put any force on that. Basically, it is like you have certain Upanishad concepts that is re-rendered in the Vaishnava traditions. So Avatara concept is re-rendered by the Vaishnavas. So you get the Dashavatara concept, etc. And we finally reach to the Islamic invasion period, and that is the period in which Ramacharita is authored. So when you have that entire cultural context of that period is because we had a lot of Islamic invasions and the people were completely battered with a lot of painful events like destruction of temples and these Islamist people they don't really give any peace to the society. So that time you have the poets like this Tulsidas and others authoring just to energize the society which is completely battered and defeated. So they need to be energized with the ancient heroes. So then that is the kind of context and environment in which Ramacharita has emerged. So then whatever they did is, for example, one example I will tell you. In the Valmiki Ramayana, Valmiki has no problem in showing the non-vegetarian habits of Sri Rama. In fact, it is predominantly there in the multiple slokas so that you cannot discard it. And so Rama is a Kshatriya, so there is no prohibition for a Kshatriya to not eat this meat. So definitely, it's absolutely nothing wrong that Rama is doing. So he is killing deer, killing other animals. Even mention about fishing in the Pampa Lake and frying the fish and eating. So people may be getting shocked and surprised, but these are
Yeah.
all there in the Valmiki Ramayana. But in the Tulsi Ramayana, if you look at Ramacharita if you look at that time, what is happening is that the Islamic invasion happened, and even the Hindus were not even allowed to, kill any kill this deer or anything. All the meat that was reserved for the Muslims. So they were completely turned into vegetarians. Of course, there are initially the Buddhist Jain influence
Buddhist
also
and Jainism.
led to the vegetarianism, but later on the Kshatriyas were completely defanged. They were not allowed to use weapons. They don't, in fact, when they don't have any weapons, how do they kill animals? So they were all become vegetarians. So in that, if you look at then re-rendering of Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana as Ramacharita, they have put utmost, they have completely filtered out the non-vegetarian diet habits of the Sri Rama in that. So in that particular social structure, they want to distance away from the meat-eating Muslims. So their hero, that is new, the Rama has been rendered as a different hero who is completely a vegetarian and whatever that typically a Kshatriya or a Muslim will do. Of course, they are fighters, so they completely distanced it out and then created a new Rama who is purely vegetarian and who is having that completely like divinized and an avatara of Vishnu. So Vaishnava avatara concept, everything become very predominant. Of course, Valmiki Ramayana have some glimpse of the Vaishnava Avatara concept, but it is multiplied by tenfold in the Ramacharita. So then that is why the modern readers who are familiar with the Ramacharita get very difficult to read Valmiki Ramayana. So, for example, all the traditional reading of Rama's life, like Sundarakanda recitation, etc., they follow the Ramacharita Sundarakanda. Very rarely they focus onto the Valmiki Ramayana, and sometimes they try to distance away from the Valmiki Ramayana because of its very harsh treatment of Rama. And even Valmiki has, just like his non-vegetarian aspect, Valmiki has no problem in showing the different emotions in Rama's character.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He become angry, he becomes
Yes.
sad. All these things are
Yes.
shown in the Valmiki Ramayana. But in the
I
Ramacharitamanus, you don't see any of that.
Yeah, I feel, Mr. Jijit, that a lot of reverence that we have right now for Lord Rama, the pujas that are done, the artis that are done, the everything that happened with Ayodhya Mandir, the
Yes.
sentiments, that is predominantly because of Tulsidasa's Ramcharitramanas that
Yes.
converted that historical fact into a deification,
Yes.
which now that I have understood, now that I have heard from multiple sources about the original Valmiki Ramayana being completely different from what
Yeah.
it is right now, somewhere I feel I feel that Tulsidasa wrote Ramcharitramanas in a pure bliss form, in
Correct.
a
Correct. Yes.
pure love and pure bhakti, which is good for him.
Yes. Yes.
But I think it was not right for the country. This is just my humble opinion, because I feel, because rather than looking, had people followed Valmiki's Ramayana more, we would have thought, oh, there are certain flaws, but he's like us. He's like us, that means we can become like him.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we can strive to be like him. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
moment you convert a human being into a deity, it goes out of your hand. You are like, Ore yaar, do you want me to be like Ram? He was a Bhagwan. You
Mhm.
don't even try. You
Yeah.
don't even
Exactly.
try
Yeah.
to emulate anything. You like, oh, let me just prostrate before him, lie down, because he's a god. He's the avatar of Mahavishnu. Who am I but a mere man in front of a god? I can never be like him.
Right, right.
That I
See,
think is the problem.
yeah, I can add to that. For example, now if you look at many of the left-leaning people, they will say that Ram will not attack. No, as if Rama is a passive,
Absolutely.
vegetarian eating and nobody. No, because so this Tulsi Ramana has completely no no, I would say no some no, I would say the sort of makeup. I would say no, you have some filter in the photograph. Na? Like some real person, you will after the filter, he will like a completely a different person. So it will mean Rama has been completely glossed so that he become a completely different personality compared to the Valmiki Ramayana. So much so that in 21st century people say no, if no there is an aggressive reaction from the Hindus, they will say no, your Rama will not do that. Rama is Maryada Purushottama, he will
Yes.
not do that. No, that kind of level people have gone. That means there is a kind of disengagement with the reality,
Yes.
and no, people are not even fighting for the noble causes anymore, because the real Valmiki Ramayana, Rama is whenever there is a need of an aggression, he shows that aggression,
Yeah.
right? So that Rama is completely glossed over into the Ramacharitamanus.
Because in the book also, there's a point which is actually the next point. You have also
Yeah.
mentioned, and it is also, you have also mentioned, as it is mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana, that Lord Ram was a human being. He has said that he was an
Yes.
exceptional human being worth emulating. And that is why if you want to bracket him as an avatar, that would not be completely wrong. You can,
Right,
because
right. Yeah.
as a human being, he deserves to be called as somebody who had a very higher consciousness. Mr. Jijit, now another very important thing I want you to explain. Please explain to the viewers the concept of later editions, poetic imaginations, and VRM, which is the Valmiki Ramayana. So I want to know, what is a later edition. So, okay, let's take a use case. If I go to the Gita press today, pick up Valmiki Ramayana from the Gita press, the book that I will have in my hand, is it 100% authentic to what Valmiki wrote, or there are later editions or more modifications on top of what Valmiki wrote? So I want to understand the formula. What
Yeah. Yes.
book, if I go and purchase, what will I get in my hand?
Yeah. Right. Yes. So there are two types of later editions, I would say. Was the Valmiki Ramayana corpus, which is completely different from other things like Tulsi Ramayana, Kamba Ramayana, or Albhuda Ramayana or Jain Ramayana. These are all different species. So consider that these are all different species. We are only talking about Valmiki Ramayana itself. So Valmiki Ramayana itself have a lot of variations. I would say thousands of manuscript variations were there in the Valmiki Ramayana. When we started the research, that is very after the Indian independence, we had a project of around 25 years, which is on the Oriental Institute of Baroda in Gujarat. There were thousands of scholars who have read Valmiki Ramayana, and they're trained in textual analysis. They all joined together, worked for 25 years, and they have gone through thousands of manuscripts of extant manuscripts of Valmiki Ramayana, which are basically palm leaf preserved in palm leaves, etc. So what they did is every sloka inside the Valmiki in a one manuscript, they compared with every other same sloka which is there in the other thousands of manuscript versions. So whichever slokas are present in all the manuscript versions, they are considered as the core verses, which because it has not undergone any modification. That means that is very ancient. Then there are certain slokas which have no correspondence with the other versions. So they are suspect verses, which means they can be potential later additions. And there are slokas which are there in one or two manuscript versions, but they are modified in another or some other two or three manuscript versions. So what we do with that? So they have put certain rules for information analysis. So basically, this is pure information analysis with a very well-defined methodology. So the end result, because I am not going to more details, the end result is that they get a kind of a text where there are 18,600 slokas, which is considered as very most ancient part of the Valmiki Ramayana. And that ancient part, they are called critical edition of the Valmiki Ramayana. And if you look at the largest manuscript version, that will contain 24,000 slokas. So that we can consider as the largest amount of sloka corpus that is available in the non-critical versions of the Valmiki Ramayana. So, but the core and the most ancient part of the Valmiki Ramayana is 18,600 slokas, and that they consider as a critical edition. So, in which they have already considered the slokas which are not present, which are not repeated in all the manuscript versions. There are slokas which are deviated from the core, and they also define an oldest manuscript based on same information analysis. So compared after that, the end result of this 25 years of research by thousands of people. So imagine the large number of man hours, man days, or man years are spent on it. So it is not as something very trivial or no, which we can reject. So that is the we call critical edition of the Valmiki Ramayana. But these critical editions became very popular, I would say, in just 2 decades. And one of the person who made it very popular is Dr. Bibe Debroy, because he has translated the critical edition of Valmiki Ramayana into English. And even I have relied heavily on the critical edition of the Valmiki Ramayana by Dr. Bibe Dabroy, who also happened to give me the foreword for my book. Bibek ji himself has given me the foreword.
Yeah, I saw
So,
that.
so having said that, so already you have a later edition in the sense that this is not part of the critical edition. So you ask the question of Gita Press. So Gita Press is not a critical edition. That means it may contain slokas as well as adhyayas. That is in terms of Ramayana, we call it sarga. So there will be sargas and slokas which are not part of the critical edition inside this Gita Press. So Gita Press is actually following this the southern references and with some additions in the northern. So they were initially in the ancient period, I mean at least 100 years before the critical edition. The people were only just happy about having a Valmiki Ramana. They didn't care about whether it is critical edition or not. So at that time, they don't even bother to stick to a particular southern version, etc. They can even mix together southern versions, and they feel, oh, these slokas are good. Let me pick that up. So like that, they will create Valmiki Ramana version. That means it is very difficult as far as for a devotee, there is no problem because it contains all the stories about Rama. So for them, they are actually looking at the stories. So there is another story interesting. So pick that. So that is the kind of attitude that a devotee will do. But as a researcher, it is a very dangerous or it will be derail your research if you are not looking at the oldest version of the Valmiki Ramayana. For example, we are talking about geographical analysis of the text, chronological analysis of text. So as that, it's all depends upon who you are. If you are a researcher of geography and chronology, you have to stick to the critical edition of the Valmiki Ramayana, and anything which is not part of the critical edition, which is in the regional versions like the Gita Press or Southern recensions, Northern recensions, all these are, whatever content which is not in critical edition, we have to consider that as later editions within the critical edition, because the critical edition creators also mentioned like whatever inside this. Now that I have 18,600 slokas inside Valmiki Ramayana, which is designated as critical edition, but they cannot guarantee that all these 18,600 slokas are contemporary to Rama. That is another thing. So for that, you have another set of researchers, especially the geographical analysis like me, chronological and geographical analyst kind of researchers like me, who has to dig through the slokas and understand the chronological variation inside the critical edition text. So already some part of that work is already done by the 25 years of research on the creation of the critical edition. But remaining work, it is being done by researchers like me, who have to go through this 18,600 slokas, and within these slokas, which are older, which are later. So that we have to establish. For that, so large amount of part of my effort for writing the book is actually spent on that. But anyway, I have put only the final results, like this Ayodhya Kanda being the oldest one. But within the Ayodhya Kanda itself, you can have a later Sarga also. But in general, Ayodhya Kanda is the oldest Sarga or oldest Kanda inside the Valmiki Ramayana. Balakanda and Uttarkanda are the youngest one. And within that, you may have some Sarga which is in even in Uttarkanda, which can be oldest. So that is a different matter. So for that, how to understand whether it is a later edition or the core part of the Valmiki Ramayana, for that we do multiple analysis, including the geographic analysis. One of the important method is comparing it with the Rigvedic information, the Rigvedic geography and Rigvedic information, etc. So once you do all this analysis, like geographical analysis, textual comparison with Rigveda, so there is an oldest text which is a reference text for analyzing the Itihasas. So when you do all these steps, some 4 or 5 steps, you get a chronological sequence where you get, okay, this is the Kanda level. Ayodhya Kanda is the oldest, and Balakanda and Uttarakhanda are youngest. And within that Ayodhya Kanda, which are the sargas which are oldest, youngest, all these things we understand. So, for example, then just to give an example, because for the other kind of later edition, I give an example of Rama Jataka, which is definitely not in critical edition, so that's a very good example. Now, within critical edition of Valmiki Ramayana, one example for the later edition is the Sugriva's no, mention about the places where Sita has to be visited.
When he sends his monkey's army into the 4 directions,
yes.
north,
Yeah,
south,
right.
east, and west of Bharatvarsh.
Yeah. For the viewers, I will explain that so that it will be a very solid example for a later edition. So if you look at these slokas, you can see so many number of peculiarities, because these are spread into 4 sargas in the Kishkinda Kanda, each sarga dedicated to one direction. So eastern direction, one sarga, then
And
southern
sargas
direction.
are chapters within the segments.
Within the Kanda of Kishkinda
Kanda.
Kanda, there are, if I remember, it is 38, 39, 40 and 41.
Okay, so 4 chapters, each chapter dedicated to one direction where Sugriva sends his army.
Right. And when you look at that, you will see so much of very kind of, I would say, nonsensical is a very hard word, but so much of confusing information. It will say Saraswati is the river Saraswati is an eastern river. Like that it is mentioned. So if Saraswati is eastern, he is talking from the point of from the Kishkinda. So if from Kishkinda, if somebody says Saraswati is in the east, now where is the Kishkinda? So it is basically, the reason is because different poets are creating this geography. That is, different poet who are not living in the contemporary to Sugriva or Rama. They are living in some Sunga and Gupta period. And I have identified the period as Mauryan period, for example. So it was in the Mauryan period, some poets have sitting somewhere in Takshashila and then talking about this eastern geography. So from Takshashila's point of view, Saraswati is in the east. So that is what they are recording in there. And the eastern side, they have recorded the geographies up to Indonesia. And this expedition, naval expedition up to Indonesia, these things are happened during the Mauryan period with their very strong navy. They have explored up to Indonesia. Same thing with this captured in one of the chapters as a eastern direction where Sugriva's Vanara army has to search for Sita. And same thing, the northern side they have gone up to Siberia. Siberia up to geography up to Siberia is mentioned. Southern side up to Kerala, where the two main cities, that is this Korke, which is a port city in the Pandya, like it is called as Kavada in the Ramayana. Korke is the name of the city, which is not well known in history. Musiris, that is mentioned, that the city of Musiris in Kerala is mentioned, but it's all Mauryan cities, Mauryan period cities, not contemporary to Sri Rama. And in the western side up to the western mountains of Pakistan. So all the geography, if you see, these are all explored during the Mauryan period. And how do you detect it in within Ramayana? So if you just exclude these four sargas, you will see a very clear continuity from the sarga number 38 to sarga number 42. Even if you exclude it, the last stanza of the sarga number 38 will match with the first stanza of sarga number 43. That means these four sargas are inserted into the entire corpus. And these sargas stand out as a later addition. And another way of detecting it that this entire sarga is mentioned in future tense. This is a very signal, that is a very, very important poetic signal that this is something which is not belonging. Because remaining sargas are in past tense. So here Sugriva is only telling to the Vanaras, now you should go and search in these places. And in the eastern side, Sugriva is even talking that the Vanaras should search in Sita's own kingdom, Videha, and in Ayodhya city also. So it's all complete nonsense. But then this entire thing is in future tense. There is no mention of any of the Vanaras actually going and searching anywhere in any of these places. So multiple ways, either poetic way you can detect it a later edition. Because of the structure of the Kishkinda Kanda, these four sargas stand out as a later edition. Poetically, it is used, future tense is used here instead of past tense or present tense, it is used in future tense. And another geographically, if you look at, you can see a very clear signature of the Mauryan period. So
So
this is an example of later edition.
is also the story of Love and Kush a part of later edition? That they were born, they went to the kings, they were singing the story. That is how Ram got
These
to know
are
about.
no, not these are not like as late as the Mauryan period, whatever these four sargas I mentioned. These four sargas are the most youngest part of the Valmiki Ramayana that I could see. But of course, Shambhuga episode is again the episode of Shambhuga, where Rama is going and killing the Shudra ascetics Shambhuga. This is again later than this Mauryan period insertion. This is inserted in the Sunga period.
Yeah.
But the Lava Kusha narrative, they're comparatively later than Valmiki because see, the Valmiki become a third person there. So
Yes.
definitely it is not authored by Valmiki, but one first generation or second generation disciples of Valmiki has authored it. So
So
it is chronologically later, but it's not extremely late like Mauryan period or Sunga period.
exactly. So if we can break the formula in this way. So you have the core VRM, which is the
Core
core
VR.
of Valmiki. VRM means Valmiki Ramayana. So
Yes.
core VRM plus
Yeah.
you have the LA, which you call as later editions.
Yeah.
The third also what I have seen is Puranic interventions, PIs as you're also calling them sometimes. That's some
Yeah.
Puranic things also got added. So can you shed some light on what do you mean by Puranic interventions and what are some of the Puranic elements that got added to the core of VRM which might not be completely true and nowhere near the reality. So I want to also understand the Puranic interventions.
So the late tradition is a category of I have very clearly explained what is the nature of the late tradition. Two types of late tradition. One is which are not part of critical edition, and some of them are part of a critical edition. Now the Puranic back projections. That is what the term I have used. These are like after the Itihasas, the core part of the Itihasas are whatever is contemporary to Rama and whatever is contemporary to the Pandavas. That is the core part of the Itihasas. So anything happened before them, that also part of the core because that has happened in the past of the the main the main heroes or the main protagonists. So whatever happened later to them, but they are that which are projected onto the period of Rama. That is this is something which is a new kind of a phenomenon that you see in the Itihasas compared to Rig Veda, because Rig Veda have no methodology of, there was no possibility of projecting anything in the past into the into anything in the future, or anything in the present time into the past, because that is a highly maintained text, like a tape recorder. It is maintained like a tape recorder or an inscription. Whereas Itihasas have more flexibility, where the later poets can include later information and project it, present it as if it was existing during the Rama's lifetime itself. So that activity has been done. And basically what happens is that the Itihasic period, then I will have to talk about the chronology slightly. So the Itihasic period is the period 2 centuries after the Rigvedic end period. That is 10th Mandala Rigveda ended at 1900 BC. And from 19, some 50 years overlap also involved. So 1950 to 1850 is the period of Rama's contemporary period. So we call it Rama era. And 1850 to 1750, that century is the Pandava era. So from 1950 to 1750 is the core period of Rama and the Pandavas. And soon after, immediately after 1750, they have the poets, the ancient poets have engaged into creating something new, and that new something new is the Puranas. So, for example, the rishis were preoccupied by creating the Vedas before the Pandavas and Rama. And after Pandavas and after Rama and Pandavas, they were preoccupied in creating the new entity that is called the Puranas. And of course, there are some scholarly consensus that there was an ancient Purana which was more or less contemporary to even Pandavas and Rama, but we don't have that text anymore, because in there are certain Brahmana and Aranyaka Upanishads where some Puranas are mentioned. The word Purana is there in those texts. So that means there was an existing Samhita, the something called a Purana Samhita existed. But that got absorbed, completely dissolved into whatever we currently call Puranas. So that whatever we currently call Puranas, that is Vishnu Purana, Shiva Purana, Brahmanda Purana, so many number of 18 Puranas are very famous. Major Puranas are 18, and there are Upa Puranas. So this Purana corpus, which is larger than Mahabharata, this is authored after 1750 BC, or if you don't focus on the chronology, it is authored after Kurukshetra War. So this is a post Kurukshetra War literature that we call as Puranas today. And large amount of that is authored during the Sunga and Gupta period. Because the Mauryan period was more or less the Mauryan kings were focused on the Jain and Buddhist. Their philosophy was completely focused more onto the Jain, to Mahavira and Siddhartha Gautama.
Because Chandragupta Maurya converted to Jainism and Ashoka later converted to Buddhism.
Correct. So, in fact, conversion claims are a little bit exaggerated, but they were preoccupied with the Jain rishis and the Buddha sannyasis.
Yes.
So soon after that, the Sunga king, that is Pushyamitra Sunga, killed the last Mauryan ruler. Again, the focus shifted back to Vedic literature. So there was a shift. So once the focus shifted back to the Vedic literature, then there was a very interesting period where the entire the ancient literature, like including the Puranas, were focused with a lot of new attention, and that is the period where a large amount of the size of the Puranas have increased like anything. And that is why we call the major chunk of the Puranas are authored during the Sunga and Gupta period. Because a lot of materials that you are seeing in the Puranas, they have signature of Sunga and Gupta period. So Sunga period related concept of Vaishnavism and Shaivism, and Gupta period Vaishnavism and Shaivism. All these are like the major components of the Puranas that we read today. So when we say the major gravity of the Puranas, even though it has a history of coming from 1750 BC, the major information gravity of the Puranas is in the Sunga and Gupta period. And during this period where there is a lot of interest in the Puranas, and they were even just like today in 21st century, we are looking back into the past. the Sungas and Guptas are also having this interest of looking back into their past. So they will look all the up to the Rigvedic period, Mauryan period, or even before, no, somewhere into the Kurukshetra period, Rama's lifetime. Everything they will look back. At that time, they have inserted certain information into the Ramayana and Mahabharata. That is the Puranic material. The material of the Puranas got inserted back into the Ramayana and Mahabharata,
Got it.
such a way that it looks contemporary to Rama and
Yes.
Pandavas. This is how the Yuga system, very famous thing, where we say there was Krita Yuga, then Treta Yuga, then Dwapara, then Kali Yuga. I mean, it's okay to have these yugas, but the size of the yugas, like the total duration of the Chaturyuga as 43 lakhs 20,000. These are all Sunga Gupta period creations. And then projecting that Rama have lived in that particular large lakhs and lakhs of years, large Treta Yuga, the end of Treta Yuga, Rama lived, and then the end of Dwapara Yuga, the Krishna lived. So this entire setup they have created during the Sunga and Gupta period.
So
So
basically,
these
the
are all
Puranic.
Puranic.
Huh. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah. Yeah, this is the what basically we call it Puranic back projections. And of course, the chronology. So basically, it's something like a lensing effect.
Yeah.
So when you look from the lens of Guptas and Sungas, our prehistory become exaggerated to a kind of
Yes.
maybe 1,000 times larger compared to what actually it was there. Now, what is the purpose of it? Maybe there are a lot of multiple opinions to it because they want to consolidate the power and tell to the sub people that we were there for from lakhs of years, and this is where the unnecessary conflict of Sanatana Dharma with science started.
Yes. Please
So
elaborate on
today,
that.
the
Yeah.
only yeah, right. Yeah, only conflict that we have. Otherwise, Sanatana Dharma is very close to science. In fact, many of the attributes of Sanatana Dharma is similar to the science attributes of science. But because of this chronology exaggeration, we unfortunately ended up with one small conflict with the science. Because automatically, if Rama lived in this 4.32 million Chaturayuga, then Rama will be somewhere 8 lakhs years ago.
Yeah.
And that time you have this Homo erectus. There is no human beings existing at that time.
Absolutely. Homo
And
sapiens
this
were
is the
not there.
reason. This is where, because of this information exaggeration, something like a lensing effect, we ended up into conflict with the science. But once you correct it, then there are no conflict with science.
So basically, these Puranic backstories were added by later civilizational
Ah,
kings of the
yes, yes,
as the Indian history and civilization progressed.
yes.
Maybe they wanted to say that what is happening today as well. I'm from Rajasthan, so even the deputy chief minister of Rajasthan,
Hmm.
she says that we, because they are Rajputs, that we trace our lineage to Lord Ram, and
Hmm.
she's like, we have a family tree. So maybe these kings of the Gupta era or the Mauryan era or whatever, they wanted to tell their people that we come from the same lineage and ancestry, like the Suryavanshis,
Yeah, yes.
wherein they were able to do this. They were living for 8 lakh years. They had magical weapons. They used to fly. There was a nuclear weapon, and we'll come to this thing later as well. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yes.
I think this is a very. You're absolutely right. The biggest disservice this thing has done to us is to create a conflict between Sanatan Dharma and science, which we are getting affected till date. Mr. Jijith, now I want to move on to a very important part. Okay, that is, I want to understand from your findings certain geographical evidences of some of the important places as it is mentioned in Ramayana. I think it is very important. Before that, I just wanted to tell our viewers the basic structure of VRM. So you have the Balakanda, which is the events in the early life of Rama. You have the Ayodhya Kanda, which is the banishment of Rama into the forest by, stepmothers. Then you have the Aranya Kanda, the forest life of Rama he was living with Ma Sita and Lakshmana. Then the Kishkinda Kanda, which is Rama's life in Kishkinda, that is when he meets Hanumat and Sugriva. Sundarakanda, the actions before the war, Yuddhakanda, the actual war, and Uttarakanda, the post-war. So this is the basic structure of the Valmiki Ramayana. Now, Mr. Jijith, I don't want to go into a lot of detail because I want people to pick the book, but there are a few things which I want to tell the viewers of your findings. I'm going to talk about four historical places, four important historical places that they are mentioned in Ramayana. A. Ayodhya. B. Panchavati. C. Kishkinda. And D. Lanka. I'll just limit myself to these four important places that people know about.
Yes.
Now, according to your findings, I want you to tell the viewers what we believe to be the actual locations of Ayodhya against what it is. It could be the same, it's fine. What we believe to what it is of Ayodhya, what we believe to what it is of Kishkinda, what we believe to what it actually is of Panchavati, and what we believe to actually what it is for Lanka.
This is the crux of the book, also the Geography of Ramayana, where because of which there was a lot of, I mean, till date, I get so many opinions, counter opinions about it. So yes, starting with Ayodhya, I have as a researcher, I have started with a very open mind. I was ready to accept, if it leads to me, like logically, if it leads to me, I was ready to accept that Ayodhya could be in Sumeria, for example, because there was a lot of studies about so that Rama and Dasharatha all of living in Sumeria. Some others say they were in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Indus Valley civilization cities. So I was completely open in my research. But fortunately, I would say that as if Rama guiding me, I got a very good, clear understanding that there was a eastward migration of the one branch of the Ikshvakus that is leading from Saraswati towards Yamuna and then finally to Ganga and finally to Sarayu River. That is the proper Sarayu River of the Uttar Pradesh. So I have with a lot of kind of, because people will tell it in a matter of faith, but I am not talking about from the matter of faith as granted, not taken for granted. I can actually have proved that Ayodhya city where Rama has lived, that is exactly the Ayodhya city of the Uttar Pradesh, which is on the banks of Sarayu. So maybe this particular court case, etc., happened in the about Temple Ayodhya.
Babri
That
Masjid.
time my book was not there. But now I can tell if there is a kind of a case in the court, I can prove in the court that Ayodhya is exactly the Ayodhya city of the Uttar Pradesh. That much information I have put in my book. Now with the same research, I have gone through the other locations that you mentioned. So I get equality. That is, whatever is mentioned in the Ramayana is exactly same as in the reality in real world. I have equality for Ayodhya, then for so many places like the river Gomati, Syantiga, the Vedasruti, Sringiverapura, exactly same. Bharadwaja Asrama in Prayaga, exactly the same. Chitrakuda, exactly the same location where the tradition of identified in the Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh border. Chitrakuda is exactly the place. So there are no kind of confusion, conflict. But after Chitrakuda, things start slightly having an offset. So I see Atri Asrama very close to Chitrakuda, more or less exactly the same. Then there is a Sharabanga Asrama, which is exactly same where the tradition has placed it in Madhya Pradesh. Sudikshna Asrama, we have two locations and one of them matches with whatever description in the Valmiki Ramayana. So I would say even up to Sudikshna Asrama, things are all correct. But from there, any location to the south of it, I started seeing discrepancy. So whatever the Valmiki Ramayana mentioned and whatever the tradition believes, for example, Panchavadi, I get the location, I mean, cutting all the logical derivations, but it's everything is logically derived in the book. So the reader have to read the book. I'm advising the reader to read the book
Yep.
for the derivation.
Yep.
But concluding the derivation, once you conclude it, the Panchavadi, I get it located in the northern Madhya Pradesh, in a district of Satna.
No,
And
and what was originally thought of it location as?
right. So there are, in fact, unknown to people, there are two locations for Panchavadi in the tradition. One is the Nasik in
Nasik.
Maharashtra,
Yeah.
and another one is Bhadrajalam. That is, there is a place called Parnashala near Bhadrajalam, that is in the Telangana.
Okay. Andhra
So,
Pradesh. Telangana
yeah,
now.
so there is two claims which are like one in Maharashtra, another one in Telangana for Panchavadi. But 90% of the people believe Nasik is the traditionally, I mean, 90% believe Nasik is the Panchavadi. But you don't get the if you follow the Yojana distance and directions mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana, you don't get Rama travel to Maharashtra. There is no mention of Rama, Rama reaching up to Maharashtra. When you follow actual footsteps of Rama and the directions and the Yojana distance mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana, I mean, I can maybe mention a slight important point where Rama went southwards up to Agastya Asrama, which is actually located on the northern foothills of one of the branches of the Vindhya Mountains, and that is located in the Madhya Pradesh. So
Okay.
from there, Agastya has asked Rama to go northwards, and this is where the tradition breaks apart because they just get influenced by that location of Nasik and then ignore this sloka and then go southward. But actually, you should go northwards. So finally, you end up in Satna district on the banks of the Satna River.
In Madhya Pradesh.
And another shocking discovery is that entire Valmiki Ramayana, the location of this Kishkinda is mentioned as on the Vindhya mountains.
Which is where in today's time?
It is again in Madhya Pradesh. Vindhya mountain ranges is actually the mountain range of Madhya Pradesh.
But we used to believe till date that it is the modern Kishkinda is modern day
Kishkinda,
Hampi, which is in
Hampi in
Karnataka,
Karnataka.
which is
Yeah.
not.
So
This is
it
not
is
true.
not because if you look at any sloga about Kishkinda, in Valmiki Ramayana, there are multiple slogas about the location of Kishkinda. It is always mentioned as on the foothills of the Vindhya mountains. So this is another shocker, but actually it's not a real shocker for anybody reading the Valmiki Ramayana Sanskritam slokas. They will see even Vivek Debroy's English translation, which is a ditto word by word translation of the critical edition of Valmiki Ramayana. You will see everywhere the Kishkinda is mentioned on the foothills of the Vindhya mountains, and it is also mentioned as a curve network. So anyway, it is described with the poet as a city, but the nature of the city is that it is a cave network. That
Then
is inside which Vanaras are living. The same thing happened to Lanka. So again, it's a very lengthy derivation,
yeah.
but ultimately I got Lanka as a clear island in the mouth of the Narmada. So Narmada mouth today is become 1/10 of the size because of siltation, because huge amount of the soil is because of soil erosion for thousands of years. That mouth become reduced to whatever that was there in 2000 BC period. The size reduced to 1/10 of the size. So when we say this mouth of Narmada in the ancient period, which we can see in the bathymetric studies, the bathymetry is the shoreline, the study of the shoreline of the peninsular India. You can see the mouth of Narmada was as big as Goa. So whatever the size of Goa, that same size was the size of the mouth of Narmada. So it was more or less the Narmada mouth was more like an ocean, and the entire ocean around Gujarat was considered as the Dakshina Samudra because the Dakshina Samudra concept came from the Indus Valley people. So Indus Valley people, they are actually living on the Saraswati and Sindhu river, and both the rivers drain into the ocean which is surrounding the Gujarat. And so that is the ocean where the Sindhu and Saraswati drain. That is the Dakshina Samudra. So it's a part of the Arabian Sea, but more precisely, it is the sea around Gujarat. So
So
it
you
includes,
so you are saying that Lanka
right.
that is mentioned in Ramayana that we have known since we were children, since we were born,
Yes.
to
Yes.
be Sri Lanka, which is a different country.
Ah.
That is on the when you reach Kanyakumari and then you go further from that, that is when you reach Sri Lanka, which is a
Hmm.
country and an island. So Ravan's Lanka was not there.
Yes. Yes.
The Lanka that is referenced in Ramayana, which was ruled by the Rakshasa clan led by Ravana, is somewhere in Gujarat.
Right, right. So there are multiple reasons for that. It's again very huge kind of a logical leap for anybody who are hearing the for the first time. But in the book, we have explained every logical steps reach that. One of the important part is that Lanka is always mentioned as in existing in the Dakshina Samudra. That is very clear. That is very easy to understand because right from the Rig Veda onwards, Dakshina Samudra is the ocean around Gujarat.
I'm sorry because there's one thing that I wanted to then know.
Yeah.
Certain things were coming in my mind then. So you are saying Ayodhya that we know of is the exact Ayodhya also, as
Yes.
per
Yes.
as your research, which is in Uttar Pradesh. The Panchavati that we know to be either in Nashik or Andhra Pradesh is actually in Madhya Pradesh.
Yes.
Even Kishkinda is not in Karnataka in Hampi, it is also in Madhya Pradesh.
I have identified it as
Ha.
because the only things matches with the Valmiki Ramayana is a cave network And the best cave
Yes,
network inside the
Bhimbetka cave
Vindhya mountain
network.
is Bhimbetka.
Yeah,
Yes.
you mentioned.
Yeah.
So Kishkinda is in Madhya Pradesh as well because of Bhimbetka cave network, which is found in that area. And Lanka, that we supposedly used to think it is in Sri Lanka, is actually somewhere in the port city of Narmada, which is in Gujarat.
Yes.
N- what my mind is now not able to understand, and let's see if you have some references or something. Maybe I missed it in the book, but I want to know then. If Ram came to Sugriv for help in finding Ma Sita, if Sugriv's Kishkinda was in Madhya Pradesh, how is it possible? Knowing that Vali was kind of an ally of Ravana, they knew each other. There was a healthy, bromance between them. They were friends or they used to fight and they know. How is it possible? If actual Lanka is in Narmada in Gujarat, how is it possible that Sugriv's Kishkinda was unaware as to where to find Ravana? They are literally neighbors.
Right. So maybe today, with all the transport systems, etc., these locations like Bhimbetka and Narmada River Math appears to be very close by. But it is, we have to understand that this is actually 2000 BC, that is 1950 to 1850 BC, where whatever we can do today, even 1/100th of that is a very long distance for them, right? Because see, today we can travel this. 48 kilometer on not 48 kilometer, you can travel in a few hours, right? If you travel in a car, you can travel in few hours, but 48 kilometer was the duration one a person who can travel on foot from sunrise to sunset in that ancient period. So the distances, whatever we think is very short today, is very long in that period. And second thing is the actual things are already mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana, because see, Rama first encountered Sugriva, who was in exile from Kishkinda. So he was not
Yes.
living in Kishkinda at that
Yeah.
time. He was in an enemy territory of Kishkinda, which is called Dhunduani. So you can see in Madhya Pradesh a location called Dhunduani, named after Dundubi, who is the enemy of Bali. So Bali is in this Bhimpedka, that is the Kishkinda, and Dunduani is to the east of it. And in the very close to Dunduani, we have the Pampa Lake, which is the Barna Lake of today. And the mountains to the west of the Barna Lake is the Rishyamukha mountain. And there was a conflict between Bali and the rishis of that mountain, and because of which he cannot enter that territory. There are two reasons. One reason Valmiki Ramana mentioned, because Bali have a conflict with the rishi, that this Rishyamukha, the rishi of Rishyamukha, forgot the name, but he was the this Matanka Rishi. So Matanka Rishi and Bali have a conflict, and Matanka Rishi has prohibited Bali to enter into that territory. And considering that as free of fear of Bali, Sugriva was living there. Second reason, which I have found out, is that whatever this the territory which is mentioned as the territory of Madanka Rishi was also the territory of Bali's enemy, that is Dundubi. And Dundubi is the place name. Dunduani is already there in that location. So because of that, he was living basically, in other words, he was living in enemy territory, in single word. And this Rama have encountered this Sugriva. No, typically you can have made an alliance. We will make an alliance with the first person you meet. So there was a potential chance of Rama meeting Bali, but it didn't happen. But he met Sugriva.
So now the second question that then comes up, again, very big contradiction. There is a mention in the Ramayana. I don't know if it is in Valmiki Ramayana or it is a core Valmiki Ramayana or it is a later edition, but there's a mention in the Ramayana that we all know and adore, is the fact that they constructed a bridge when they had to go to Lanka to fight Ravana. Ravan. So two parts again. If the Lanka was in Gujarat, was there a bridge that was constructed? And second part, what is the relevance of the modern Ram Setu bridge that has been discovered by the satellites?
Well, it's a very important point. So the Valmiki Ramana bridge have so many number of properties which has to match with any bridge which we considered as that same bridge. So one is, first and foremost, the term Rama Setu is not there in Valmiki Ramana. It is always referred as Nala Setu.
Nala
And
Setu.
Nala
Okay.
Setu, and the direction is from the north to south. So it is
Acha, so Nala Setu because of the architect, Nal and Neel.
architect Nala, right? So the term itself, Rama Setu, the term itself is not there, and the bridge was always referred to as Nala Setu because the architect is Nala, and that is anyway we can ignore it. I mean, Nala is made the architect, but it is for Rama, so we can say that Rama Setu. We can, but that is not the problem. The problem is the bridge is constructed in the southward direction. So this wherever we consider the Nala Setu, that should be a southern the bridge which is supposed to be southward direction bridge. So it has to start from north and it should end in south. But if you look at Rama Setu, the direction is from west to east. So, for example, Rameshwaram is in the west in Tamil Nadu, and where it is ending at the Sri Lanka, that is in the eastern direction. So, the bridge is in the west to east direction or the eastward bridge, whereas Nala Setu is a southward bridge. So, that is again a discrepancy. So, in whichever way, whether some researcher says that it's not matching with the Valmiki Ramayana. The bridge has to, the primary condition of the bridge has to be a north to south bridge. That is where we have to disqualify the Rama Setu of today to be the actual bridge mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana.
So the Ram Setu that we see, the images and satellite images that we see and that we feel is the bridge, that is actually not the bridge
So
linked to Ramayana.
that bridge have some significance. It has got some civilization significance because the people of Tamil Nadu have reached Sri Lanka through that bridge. Because this bridge was it was actually not a bridge actually, no, it was basically a land connection. It was a continental connection because see the Sri Lanka and India, all this no, they were separated from this African side because of the split of the Pangaea. So one small speck of geography, land split. So the Sri Lanka and India, they were moving together, right? So earlier this is a single landmass, and only because of some in sea level rise, the connection between the Sri Lanka and India become thinner and thinner, and slow. Finally, it looked like a bridge, but it actually not a bridge. Actually, it's a huge landmass of almost 100-kilometer width and more almost 100 square kilometer size.
So it is
But
natural, that means.
it is natural.
It is not
And
something which is man-made.
it is actually the NASA's evidences are basically slightly twisted. They basically saying it is a natural bridge, not an artificial bridge. So there is, because I'm a scientist, so I have looked at the reports from NASA. They're telling it's a natural formation.
Okay, so they are not
How it
saying
is getting
artificial.
how it is getting spinned as an artificial is something that is.
Yeah.
And see, that is this is so the primary reason why we are rejecting it is because it's a kind of a eastward bridge, which is not matching with the description of the Valmiki Ramayana. And if you look at the Yojana distance, which is active in the Rama period, for anything which is a dimension, the dimensions are measured in a 120-meter Yojana size. So in the Valmiki Ramayana, this bridge is always mentioned as a dimension, that it is 10 yojanas wide and 100 yojanas long. So dimensions are always expressed in a 120-meter size yojana. So 120-meter size yojana matches only with this Bhagatrao Island in the Narmada River mouth. And the direction also matches, no? Southward bridge.
So there was a bridge. There was a bridge, but
there was a bridge. There was a bridge.
Constructed.
And if you look at Valmiki Ramayana, it never says that this bridge is for eternity. They never say, right? They always, there is a, if you read between the lines of the Valmiki Ramayana, the bridge was constructed to last only for the war. It is not for ever. Like it will be like they constructed this bridge
as a temporary measure. As a temporary measure to just to, so that it can facilitate the war.
Yeah,
that's it.
It can facilitate a large number of army marching. So for that purpose, the bridge is constructed. There is never anywhere mentioned that the bridge will last forever. Second thing, if you automatically, if you are thinking that the bridge will last for 21st century, then we will ask similar question: where is the palace of Ravana? Do we
absolutely
find? So only the bridge will last. The palace of Ravana will not last. Palace of Rama will not last. So that is a kind of a nonsensical proposition that the bridge, only the Rama Setu from Rama's lifetime will continue in 21st century.
And all the
Yeah,
palaces and architectures will go away, and
yeah,
only you will
yes,
have
yes.
the bridge that will remaining because of
Correct, correct.
some
So the
magical
bridge is,
powers. Mr. Jijith, now we'll come to the next segment, which is very, very, very important. Now we have set up the geographical part. We have also talked about the foundation. Now I really want to take this opportunity, since you are here, to dispel some of the myths and some of the magicalism and some of the, all these metaphysical aspect from the core philosophy and history of Valmiki Ramayana. I'm going to touch upon 4 or 5 aspects, and then you tell me whether it is a myth and what actually is the fact. The first aspect which I want to understand, I want you to explain, because you have mentioned in the book, I want you to explain the 4 types of species in a way, or 4 types of varnas, or 4 types of
yeah,
communities. Let's
right.
start with the explanation of the Aryans, Ishvakus, the Aryan clan, the Rakshasa clan, the Vanara clan, and let's, for the reference, take the Yakshas, because Kuber was a Yaksha and he's linked to it. So I'll tell you the myth, and then you tell me if you also believe or not. I just want to know opinion. The myth is that Aryans obviously are human beings, Homo sapiens. Fine, I understand. We are all Homo sapiens. That Vanaras were monkeys, like literally monkeys or apes, who had the capabilities of standing and they were very strong. That Rakshasas were asuras, demonic, with horns, teeth, eating non-veg and just consuming blood and everything. And Yakshas were higher beings with more wealth with them. This is what we know.
Right.
I now want you to first dispel, first of all, what is your take? Do you agree that yes, it is a myth? If yes, then let us explain the characteristics, that who were
Right.
these 4 communities. Let's start
Correct.
with that.
Yeah. So actually, this is like seeds of historical tribes, which are like later transformed into myths, basically. So this happens quite often. Like for example, in different part of the different ancient civilization, some tribe will be interacting with the dominant civilization that continue to exist to tell the story. So they will mythify the other tribes which are lost. So this is same thing happened. For example, I mean, in fact, you mentioned 4 tribes, but I have to talk about the Gandharvas.
Gandharva also, yeah.
Because in the Rig Veda, the Gandharvas are actually mentioned as certain people who are living in the Gandhara territory.
Which
That
is
is
near Afghanistan.
yeah,
Afghanistan side.
The Kabul River. So most of them are in Pakistan, but of course in the Charasadda Valley, and some of them in Afghanistan as well. So basically, in a very plain, brutally realistic, if you say these people are basically the northwestern Pakistanis and Afghanis. They are called
Gandharvas.
Gandharvas.
You're
Yeah,
talking about Gandharvas. Okay.
yeah. So, but actually later period, within the older parts of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana also, you can see the Gandharvas are slightly mystified into the mythical beings or divine beings, etc.
Yes.
Because we lost touch with them. I mean, subsequent culture lost touch with them, or maybe they are a little remote, like that. So same thing, like Yaksha is mentioned in the Rig Veda as some people, some kind of guardians of that northern Haryana region. So even in the Mahabharata, that tradition is continuing, saying that the Yakshas guard the Kurukshetra. The 4 corners of Kurukshetra are guarded by the Yakshas. So these are all living people. And when you come to the Rakshasa, so the etymological meaning of the Rakshasa are basically similar to Kshatriya. The Kshatriya is basically rulers or some other way. They are protectors of Kshetra. Kshetra means a region. So
Area.
Kshatriya will protect a region, and that is why he is called a Kshatriya. And Rakshasas are basically, Raksha means protection. So they are also protectors. So they are protecting their community. So such people are called Rakshasas.
So they are not demons. They are not
They're not demons.
demons from Netherlands.
Because see, in the north, in the Indo-Gangetic plain, that is from the Indus River up to the Ganga River, so that is the Indo-Gangetic plain, which is a pure plain, right? It contains some forest, but more or less it's a plain from Bengal to this Indus River. So that Indo-Gangetic plain, you have all these people who are protectors. They were given the name Kshatriya, and they are part of the Chaturvarnya. Whereas if you go a little south, that is from Madhya Pradesh onwards, they were not following the Chaturvarnya. So there is no concept of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, etc.
Yeah.
So, but there are also people, there are people territory, there are protectors of the territory. So they are called Rakshasa. So this is why the Viradha, who is slightly to the in the Madhya Pradesh, so slightly to the south of the Indo-Gangetic plain, you have another protector of the territory, and he is is a Viradha. He is the first Rakshasa that Rama encounters. So similarly, a little more civilized Rakshasa, they are living in Lanka, and they are basically Harappan people. Because see, the Viradha basically he can be considered as a Rakshasa who is very much primitive and uh, not a we cannot consider him as a part of a civilization. Whereas the Bhagatrav is actually a very bona fide Harappan city, a Harappan port city basically. So it's actually a seaport, and a ruler of that seaport is naturally highly civilized. And this is the reason why we call Ravana's description. If you say he is highly educated,
Yes.
he knows music. We will talk about Ravana as something like a civilized person. Of course, character is different, but he, as part as culture and civility, Ravana is of high quality. That is because he is actually a kind of a Rakshasa or a equivalent of a Kshatriya who is protecting that area. That is that Lanka, that is a kind of a port city, seaport, and he has control over large amount of territory. That is almost the Dandakaranya up to that Dandakaranya. That is the entire Madhya Pradesh is actually kind of in control of Ravana. And the rishis were living in the mercy of this Ravana, basically. Inside, anybody who is living inside Dandakaranya is in the mercy of Ravana's power. And of course, there are certain powers which are actually maybe challenging Ravana. That is, one is Bali's kingdom, Kishkinda, another one is Kartaviri Arjuna's He Janapata. Both of them were actually opposition, but Ravana was very clever. Even though they were enemies, he was somehow managing to have a kind of a relationship with them. That is what we are seeing. Like
Alliance.
Bali became an ally of Ravana, and same thing happened with Kartaviri Arjuna. That he was initially he was very retaliated very strongly, and he captured Ravana, but ultimately because he knows very well how to negotiate with the powerful enemies. His approach is the powerful enemies he will transform into allies. So Bali and Kartaviri Arjuna became allies of Ravana. So then he was not challenged by anybody in that Madhya Pradesh area. And he has got a governor, Khara, who is in the Dandakaranya ruling from Janasthana, which is identified with Satna city itself. So he was that is a local governor of Ravana in that area. So everybody is at the mercy of Khara. So you can see this is how the Kshatriyas in the Madhya Pradesh area. Of course, there are certain pockets in the Indo-Gangetic plain where there are forests. There you can see again Rakshasas. That is why Ghadotkaja, Baka, and Hidimba, those kind of Rakshasas in the Indo-Gangetic plain. So otherwise, the Rakshasas as a very political unit existed in this Narmada region, and the Yaksha is basically a kind of a variation, a variant clan of the same Rakshasas. That's why you have so many relationship between Yakshas and Rakshasas.
Yes.
So again, there is an etymological differences in the basically it's occupational differences. Like just like a Brahmana and Kshatriya and Vaishya and Shudra, Rakshasa and Yaksha are basically occupational differences. They are the same people, but some people are called Yaksha, some people are called Rakshasas. Now we'll talk about Vanaras. So basically, the word Vanara comes from a question. The Indo-Gangetic people, when they went to the south, they say people of different culture. So they will express the exclamatory expression, Vanara. It's a Sanskrit expression. Vanara means are they human? Not because they are monkeys, but because they are following a different tradition, a different culture altogether compared to the Indo-Gangetic plain. Because they are not following Varna Vyavastha. So there is no Chaturvarnya that is they are following. And they have a different methodology of hunting, gathering. Everything is different. They live in cave networks. Instead of creating palaces, they live in cave networks. So a little primitive Mesolithic culture, Mesolithic or Paleolithic culture. So that is why they were separated out, and they were in an exclamatory manner. They were called Vanara.
But they were not ape men. They were not apes. They were
just
Homo
human
sapiens.
beings.
They were all Homo sapiens.
All Homo sapiens, but because in 2000 BC, basically everybody is Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
And we are not following that 8 lakh years where you get Homo erectus, but you don't get Homo sapien there. So either you have a certain species, but you don't have Homo sapien. So we don't follow that 8 lakh thing. 8 lakh years ago Rama, right? So we are actually dating Rama in 2000 BC, and everybody we are seeing is Homo sapiens, but of following different cultures, so that anybody in Indo-Gangetic plain, they will automatically feel a strong difference with them, strong cultural difference with them, so that they will exclaim, Vanara, are they human? Because some of the traits are like they don't follow Chaturvarnya, and there is no proper concept of a family. Like brother's wife can become wife of the elder brother wife can become wife of younger brother. All these things were there. So they were actually totally different in culture than the Indo-Gangetic plain. That is why the Sugriva adopted Bali's wife Tara, and Bali adopted Sugriva's wife Ruma. So these were all very
Yes.
shocking for the everybody. So that is why they are called Vanara.
Mr. Jijith, now we'll move on to the second very important thing that is replete in your book. I was shell shocked. I actually went into a very heated debate with my team over this term. And then I had to Google and send them certain Wikipedia articles on that. That is the myth of Vimanas.
Hmm.
Now, I want to tell what we know of Vimanas. We have heard as, Indians that there was a Pushpak Vimana that Ravana had, that it used to go into the light. You just think where you want to go and it used to reach there. A lot of Vimanas, and even there's a Viman Shastra apparently, wherein
Hmm.
there are drawings of, this kind of a cone shaped flying vehicle. And there was even an Indian Bollywood movie which said that before the Wright brothers, there was a Maharashtrian scientist who actually created a flying device or a
Hmm. Hmm.
flying machine, though he couldn't succeed, but the fundamentals were right. But in your book, I was shocked to know that the Vimanas that we know of today of flying entities never existed. Because you were talking about that though Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh are not far away, but you have to go on foot. So when a civilization is going on foot, how can you even imagine Vimanas? I
Yeah.
understand the logic. Second, you said that Vimanas were the tall buildings.
Right.
And so I don't want to say more, Mr. Jijit. Tell me, first start with what we know as Vimanas, whether it exists or not. Let's dispel what you think is right. And then let's come to the real meaning of Vimana and give me an explanation of the references of Vimanas. Then how does it make sense?
Right, right. Yeah, so unknown to many people, the word Vimana is used in Valmiki Ramayana in two different ways. It's like two different meanings for the same word, Vimana. So one is the Vimana means a tall building, which is actually, we can see in temple architecture also, you can see Vimana. Vimana means a tall structure of the build of the temple. So what happens is that the poet, I mean, and I am saying here, this is not a later poet, but Valmiki himself has used it as a twist, so that he has tried to imagine, like first of all, he can see a chariot moving around in the road. So the chariot is driven by horses, so it will just fly. Sorry, it will just ride along the road. But then, if imagine the Valmiki is a rishi, but sometimes he will go to Ayodhya or some. So and he will be like invited by the king. For example, Dasharatha himself can invite him to a Vimana. Basically, the tall structure inside Ayodhya. No, the some buildings of Ayodhya will have a tall structure. Even the palace can have the tall structure. Even definitely, in fact, literally, Valmiki himself mentioned Vimanas inside Ayodhya and Lanka in the sense of a tall building, not about the vehicle, but in the sense of a tall building. Valmiki himself explained Vimanas inside Ayodhya as well as in Lanka. So almost all cities have Vimanas, means tall towers. Like very big tall tower means more typically in the ancient period, the tall tower can be seven-storied buildings or maybe three-storied building. They are all tall towers. 3 to 7. Maximum 7 is what we understand. That is why Sapta Gopura, like that terms also came. So once you are inside that tall tower, then you can start imagining, right? So a poet is typically have an imaginative nature. So he can imagine that this when you are standing on a tall tower, when your wind is blowing, you can imagine as if he is moving in the air like a bird. He is flying. So that kind of imagination can have a poet can have very easily. And then he will typically take that into his poetry. Whenever this chariot driven by horses are moving along the road, you can imagine what if there is a chariot which is flying. So that is say most of the Vimana narrative. I mean, apart from the Gopura, that is a tall tower, most of the Vimana narrative in Valmiki Ramana is flying chariots. People don't know about it because the narrative of Ravana coming to abduct Sita,
Yes, yes.
it was a flying chariot. It's nothing like your the Bharadwaja's Vimana Shastra kind of thing, like a cone-shaped structure. No, it is not. It was nothing like that.
So
It was a
it's a
chariot.
poetic liberty.
Yeah.
Ravan did not come in a flying sorcerer or a
Correct. It
flying
was not a
object
flying
thing.
saucer, but it was a normal chariot which is imagined as flying. So
That goes on land.
yeah,
That goes on land.
it has horses, it has got charioteer. So no kind of aerodynamic can explain how can a chariot can have a horse and a charioteer and it can fly. So it's pure poetic imagination. And there are certain instances where the chariot, the Vimana is mentioned as a cloud, and but it is called total different context. When Ravana came to abduct Sita, it was a normal chariot described as a flying chariot. And then you can see Jatayu coming and hitting the horse, hitting the charioteer. So everything is actually typically what you can have in a normal chariot. Second, when Ravana went to go to meet Maricha, there is a description of Vimana where it is mentioned as a cloud shaped, etc., which can be like something like maybe we can even explain it as like a balloon. But I have only put it as speculative manner that it's an air balloon or something like that. But we can't be very sure because none of the slokas in the Valmiki Ramayana related to Vimana give you a clear that it is a real thing. But of course, if you look at my third book, I have given an example of what really constitutes a Vimana. There are evidences of traveling to outer space or sky appearing as black, etc. in the Mahabharata, where I am little more serious about Vimanas. But in the Valmiki Ramayana, there is not even a single sloga which can catch our attention, which can clearly tell that it is a really something which is a Vimana.
The third myth which you have written in the book, and I've taken a highlight because this is very powerful, and I want to say this thing with the utmost respect. I don't want people to get angry at me or at anyone, but with utmost respect. You have mentioned something about Lord Hanumana, and then it's mentioned, which I also believe. This must be enough to wake up any skeptic who still thinks that the flight of Hanuman is real. And then you go on about his size, very scientifically you explain that it's not possible to somebody with that big. So my question is again, where does the idea of Hanuman's superhuman Avenger style capabilities come up? And what evidences we have to refute them?
Correct, correct.
Very respectfully and with very sensitivity, because I know the love people have for Lord Hanumana, but I want to be very practical. I am like you, Mr. Jit.
Yeah.
I want to be very scientific. I just really want to know what are the evidences.
Yeah.
What does the logic says?
Yeah, yes. So the one is in the Sundara Kanda, which is actually a chronologically very late Kanda. Of course, it's not only maybe a slightly earlier than the this some sargas in the Balakanda and Uttarakanda. Sundara Kanda is a pure poetry, a pure poetry and a pure flight of fantasy. And in that, you can see Hanuman growing to large 10 times and 100 times bigger than himself, and he is flying.
But
So,
sorry, Mr. Jijit, I'm so sorry. In Sundar Kanda, pure poetic and pure imagination is as written by Valmiki.
that is, see, actually, how I consider that the Vimana, some part of the Vimana is original poetry by the original author himself, that is Valmiki himself, but embellished by a later poet. The reason is because there is a kind of concept of flying chariot in Rigveda also. But it's very ritual. In the ritual in which the Indra is mentioned as flying in a chariot and reaching the ritual Venu. So the flight of chariot is it's a very ancient poetic imagination. So even it predates Valmiki. So that is why I consider the Valmiki himself is the author of that kind of a poetic imagination about flying chariots. And similarly, the bird, if you see a bird, then imagining that a human being also fly. This is a nature. It is a kind of a very ancient kind of a poetic imagination. And we cannot say that it is completely done by the later poet. They had their share of embellishments, like how the Hanuman grows into hundreds and bigger size, and how no, the Surasa comes, and then there is a conflict. There is a competition between Hanuman and this Rakshasi, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and suddenly Hanuman becomes smaller
Okay.
and
Yeah.
just enter into the mouth and went through the nose. So these are all kind of poetry. Probably the later poets might have added embellishments, but the basic idea of a human being flying like a bird is similar to a chariot flying, no, the flying chariot. So this is a very ancient kind of, but I cannot get any reference from Rig Veda for this flying human being. But flying chariot, definitely, that is the only poetry that you can see in Rig Veda. So flying chariot of the Indra. So it is ancient. That is very real literary evidence we get from Rig Veda, but for we don't get any literary evidence for a flying human being in any text older than Valmiki Ramayana. But there is a benefit of doubt that Valmiki himself have rendered him as a flying person. But one more thing, the bird plava inside the Valmiki Ramayana clearly means is meaning the primary meaning of plava is to swim, not to fly.
So basically, this is
Hmm.
dramatization.
Dramatization.
This
So
is an
actually,
artist who's just trying to dramatize
right,
something. Ki maybe he was
right.
such a great a swimmer. So basically,
Hmm.
he showed, Lord Hanumana showed in those ancient times feats of superhuman endurance and athleticism. In
Correct.
today's time, you have ultra marathon runners, Mr. Jijith, running for 1,000 kilometers,
Yes.
swimming continents, swimming islands, which we never thought that human body is capable of doing. But in
Right.
today's time, you have these athletes who are pushing the limits. So I think
Yeah.
Lord Hanumana, what he did at that time to go from one area to another, he
Hmm.
showed extraordinary endurance
Swimming.
capabilities and
Yes.
swimming, be it running, jumping, swimming, whatever. He was very strong in his physical capabilities. And just to praise that, I think it was as if he was flying, as if he was
Yes.
breaking the rocks, as if he became very big,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
as if he became
Right.
very small.
Absolutely. And I will add one more point where this become very tragic, where the people after Ramacharita and of course the existing poetry in Valmiki Ramayana, where even 1% or 10% of it will be Valmiki's own contribution. So he has all the reason, even though Hanuman was swimming, he himself have all the good reasons to slightly twist it as flying, so that it become Atishayokti and poetic imagination, but later on embellished by a thousandfold by other poets. So there is a tragic situation because of that, because during the Islamic rule, right, some of this slave trade happened, right? So some people, some woman in Bengal or Bihar, I am not very sure, but royal women in Bengal, they were taken as slaves, sex slaves, unfortunately, and they were taken to faraway regions like this Baghdad and some cities in the Arabia. So, what these people, the Muslims who are captives of this slave woman, they have convinced them that in some other prison houses, Hanuman came flying and then saved these ladies and then took back them to India. So this false narrative was
Pride, false
uh,
pride also.
no. I'm saying this particular false information is given to this hapless woman so that they will not commit suicide. So see, we have paid a price for believing in this poetic imagination as real,
Absolutely.
and
That
that
is
is what
my
I'm giving this very important information that ultimately we Bharatiyas has to be realistic, because
ab-
otherwise we are ending up in this situation. So otherwise, typically what happened, these women who are captive, because definitely you have seen the ICs and all, it's a very horrible life. So these people, some of the ladies will commit suicide. In order to prevent them from committing suicide, these morons, they tell them that Hanuman came to another prison house and abducted the some of the ladies. I mean, rescued some of the ladies and took back them to India.
so they
So that,
wait in a false hope.
it's a bait and false hope.
I now want to touch upon, now that we have scientifically looked at the metaphysical aspect, and thank you for demystifying. Okay, let's jump up to the part, and here I want to understand the philosophical aspect of it. We jump up to the part when Ram finally defeats Ravana, asks Sita ki bring her, make sure that she has taken up a bath and she's fine. Everybody is watching. And Ram says a lot of things to Sita, very harsh things, but what he says is, I have nothing to do with you. No man born in a noble lineage will take back a woman who lived in another man's house. This was amongst the things that he did say to her in front of everyone. She obviously was taken aback. Initially, she was not understanding. For this particular statement, and also for the fact that he abandoned Sita when she was pregnant just because the people in his kingdom were suspecting and talking bad things about their relationship and her sanctity and her, monogamy towards her husband. This is a very debated subject till date. So I want to understand your perspective. I want to understand the philosophy. What is it teaching us?
Yeah, right.
Why are these important? I want to understand the philosophy, and I want to take, and if you also feel that there were certain things bad, I want to know why. Because if you ask me, I am conflicted.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, there are 2-3 elements which the people typically don't notice. One is that this entire there is a kind of a normal notion because of Ramacharita that Rama is completely like independent of all the emotions. But that is not what Valmiki Ramayana portrays Rama. His very raw emotions of Rama is very much very well portrayed. Now, we have seen like how the Rama is lamenting during in the Rishyamukha mountain region, where he was just to the site of this Vasanta, the spring. Automatically, he starts thinking about Sita and lamenting, and all these things. So we can see that the bond between Rama and Sita is very strong, and Rama is very strongly and emotionally attached to Sita. And I have also given an example, kind of a correlation with the Kraunja Midhunas, where the Valmiki sees that particular incident where one hunter hit two Midhunas, that is two couple birds, and one of them is hit, the other bird is crying. So that lamentation of Rama you can see when Sita is abducted by Ravana. So basically, Valmiki is very clearly telling us that Ravana is the hunter, Rama and Sita are the Kraunja Midhunas, the two birds, couple and love birds, out of which one was like the one of the killed actually in the Valmiki's observation, the one of the bird is killed, but here one of the couple, that is Sita, is abducted. Situation is same, and Rama is lamenting. So that lamenting of Rama in that Kishkinda Kanda, very close to the Rishyamukha mountain, that is equivalent to the lament of the bird, the other bird, who has seen the couple, the one of the bird got hit. So very clearly, the entire Valmiki Ramayana is tied together with the Krauntamidana episode, and very clearly the hunter is Ravana, and the two couples, the couple is basically Rama and Sita. So that way, emotionally, what is actually there, that is very clearly the Valmiki has clearly clarified. So from this point, if you look at this particular incident, you can see, of course, a natural and Rama has a natural anger when because that was because of the one visual problem. Like Sita is basically in very rag clothes, etc. Because she was typically refusing to change dress, cloth, or anything because she doesn't want anything from Ravana to be used. So she was always in her that same cloth and not interested in wearing any costly robes from Ravana. So she was in a very bad shape. But then Vibhishana one came, and when it was time for Vibhishana to present Sita to Rama, Vibhishana did one thing because he saw that Sita is in a very bad shape, very dirty clothes and all. Vibhishana asked her to change the clothes. So because it is Vibhishana and it's not Ravana, Sita agreed, and she was wearing all the costly robe, and then she came there. And of course, whatever Sita was wearing, it was also red silk cloth that Dasharatha has given. So it's not a bad cloth, but because of wear and tear, it was very bad. So that was removed. Instead of the red silk cloth given by Dasharatha, now Sita is wearing the Vibhishana's, the cloth given by Vibhishana. So very momentarily, as Rama is a human being, he got a kind of impression that Sita is living happily inside Lanka,
And she is
and he
content.
doesn't know that this is Vibhishana has given this. So automatically in his mind, automatically it will be like, okay, Sita is always wearing this kind of dress. That is maybe Ravana might have given her this dress, and that is so that emotional disturbance is there in Rama's mind. So initial reactions were like that. So suddenly he felt that Sita is not at all unhappy for living inside the Ravana's territory. Suddenly he came to that conclusion. But then as the conversation, that heated conversation continued, then he was thinking about the consequences. Like, what if I take Sita in this situation? If I take Sita and I went to Ayodhya, what will be the kind of questions the citizens will be asking me? So that is from that second thoughts, he started having a different reaction. So initially there was a natural anger, just like any husband will have a natural anger towards a wife who is appearing to be happy even though she is in the captivity of enemy. So that was the initial anger. That is a natural anger. After that, within short in subsequent moments, Rama's anger was artificial. That we can see. I mean, the slokas I've explained it in my book. Very soon, the Rama's pretending anger. It became pretended anger, and then he was trying to compensate to what happened to Sita when he reached the Ayodhya. So whatever question that the citizens of Ayodhya might ask Sita, same questions Rama asked Sita, and he pretended to be extremely angry. And then Sita slowly, initially she was in shock, but suddenly Sita also started getting that glimpse of whatever Rama's mind. Even Lakshmana also got some glimpse of it because they're all very emotionally connected people. So then Sita said, like, okay, if this is the kind of thing, then no, I don't want to leave, and then I want to no. Then like that he no, asked for a fire. So now what happened, because it's shrouded in poetry, right? So, as per the Valmiki Ramana normal narrative, Sita entered into the fire, and then Agni came, Brahmadeva came, Shiva came, and then finally everybody certified the purity of Sita. But then I have given an alternate explanation. Of course, the fire was created, and Sita was about to jump into it. But then there are so many people inside Lanka. Like there was Vibhishana's relatives, Vibhishana's wife, Vibhishana's daughter, and there was a one minister who was always to the side of Sita, preventing Ravana from killing Sita and all. So all these people, typically there are three people, and in the poetry it is mentioned as three gods. One is Agni, one is Brahmadeva, another is I think some other because Shiva came later. So there are, instead of three human beings like Trishala and this Trishala is the, I mean, anyway, Vibhishana's daughter and wife, and then this minister. There are three individuals who were ready to vouch for the purity of Sita. They have already witnessed how Sita lived. So they will automatically, I mean, it will be natural that they will all dispel all the doubts of Rama's mind. And Vibhishana himself can testify, right? This dress is not a gift of Ravana, but I have now immediately given gifted this dress. So this all will be natural kind of conversation, right? But it is completely replaced by this poetic narrative. So we actually think that Sita jumped into the fire, and then that purity was established, and then Ravana took her back. Sorry, Rama took her back. But actually, I consider that this is like a human testimony. So who are the three individuals who have seen the life of Sita in Lanka? They have testified for her purity, and based on that, subject to that testimony, Rama has accepted Sita. Right. So then he is taken back, and the pretended anger is removed, and then Rama and Sita are in cordial terms, and then they goes back to the Ayodhya. So that is what I consider has happened. So if I can dispel your conflict, I think I have achieved something, because this is same conflict in the people, many
Yeah.
people's mind.
But then a more bigger conflict arises when she was pregnant and she was
Right,
asked
right,
to
right.
leave. So,
Correct, correct.
do
Yeah.
you? What I want to know: did Rama act according to his dharma as a king, and was in his mind The dharma that he had as a king had more importance than his dharma as a husband,
Correct.
is
Yeah,
what I want to
that's what
know.
I feel. What happened inside the Ayodhya, because the poetry make you believe that there was an actual test of fire, but actually it was a testimony of individuals, human individuals. So naturally, Rama accepted it, but the citizens of Ayodhya will not accept it. For them, these are Rakshasas. So some three Rakshasas have given a testimony that Sita is pure, Rama taken him. So that is why, even though there was a fire test, the fire test is something that poet want you to believe, but actually only human testimony happened there in Lanka. Then rumor spread. Naturally, rumor will spread in Ayodhya that no, this Sita was there with Ravana, and then Rama took him. Our king Rama took him back. I mean, sorry, took her back to with her and accepted her back as wife. So now what we are supposed to do? Like if our wife goes to some another person's house and return, then are we supposed to accept a wife? Because anyway, they are not. These other wives may not be like Sita, right? They may be really cunning. So they will go to some other person's house, return back and say, "No, Rama has accepted Sita, so you have to accept me." No, these kind of problems will be there in the kingdom. So then, no, see, some places it will be like Sita's case, some places it will be like Surpadaga. Who knows? So then, but the king has to give an example. So king, he cannot individually go and discriminate whether this particular lady is like a Sita or Shurpanakha. You know Shurpanakha, right? She was lusting around all the people and asking Rama also to be her wife. And when Rama declined, then she asked Lakshmana to be her wife. So you have that kind of woman also. But as a king, he cannot discriminate. Who is Shurpanakha, who is Sita, he cannot know. So that is why, as a principle, as a king, supposed to be establishing a role model, and then Dharma took a precedence. I will agree that, because anybody can criticize Rama here, because he could be a good husband. I mean, he can be the Dharma of a husband could precede Dharma of a king, but that is Rama's choice. He chose the Dharma of a king above the Dharma of a husband, and slightly disadvantage for Sita, and sent her to forest of to Valmiki Asrama.
Makes sense. Makes sense. No, I understand. Even I used to think that he actually made a very big sacrifice.
Yes, yes,
Rama made a very big sacrifice for the future of Bharatvarsha, for
exactly.
the future
And
of Bharatvarsha to set an example as well.
yeah, and I have ended this particular scene by telling that this is a second instance of the Krauncha Miduna and Hunter shooting. So earlier it was Ravana who was shooting Sita. This time it was the citizens of Ayodhya who was shooting Sita. So the citizens of Ayodhya also acted as like the hunter, and they are the ones who separated Rama and Sita
Makes
again,
sense. Yeah, that's a very
like
nice.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. Jijit, I'm gonna ask one last question, and I think this is a very important question. As we are speaking, there is a war going on with India and Pakistan. We are today. I'm talking about specifically Indians. We Indians today are living in a very complicated world. On one hand, we are surrounded by enemies. There are wars which are happening in AI. In today's time, wars don't happen just with weapons. It happens, but it's a soft war. It's a cultural war. It's a multifaceted war that is happening. Science and technologies has reached up to a place wherein it was not even imaginable 10 years back. Forget what happened at the times of our Itihasas. At this juncture where we are today, what is the relevance of text like Ramayana? Should I, as a young individual or my children, why should I even ask them to pick up Ramayana? With what mindset should somebody read Ramayana? And which specific version of Ramayana? Extremely important. Which specific version of Ramayana should one read and should one avoid?
Yes, so these are very important questions. So one thing that the ancient rishis, they didn't do any kind of lecture, like you can see in the Bible and other 10 commandments, like no, you should not do that, you should not steal. But here, instead of that kind of, I would say, very close to stupidity, what our ancient rishis have done is that they use the history. Of course, it's not like history as recorded in the Western side, but they have used history, which is in our side, it is Itihasa, to explain this in a very, very detailed manner. So you have to understand the amount of effort that Valmiki has put in to record a real historical events in the life of one of his contemporary, that is Rama and Sita also, because Ramayana is almost about Sita as much it is about Rama. So here he has shown how a kind of the kind of moral values, even including warfare, right? Because there is one important event inside the Valmiki Ramana which has touched me like as a researcher and as an author of the book, is when now after all these things happened, Ravana is killed. Vibhishana refused to cremate Ravana. It is a real. Actually in the. It's not a later edition or anything. It's there inside the Valmiki critical edition. Vibhishana said, "I don't cremate this person because he's such a bad guy." Then Rama said, after death there is no enmity. No, and then you have to give a due respect to the dead warrior, and he has to cremate it. So, and after the Rama's advice, Vibhishna start cremating his this Ravana, right? So you can see that in Indian army does the same thing, right? So whenever there is a conflict between the Pakistani soldiers, if it is Indian army, they will after the Pakistanis are killed. Typically, the Pakistan deny the no they will even deny that they are Pakistani citizens and went away. It is the Indian army who picks up the soldier, dead Pakistani soldier. Sometimes they can be terrorists also, and they will give a proper cremation. So typically they are Muslims, so they were given the proper burial. This is the natural. So these kind of values come from Valmiki Ramayana. Even the military practices that is being followed. The enemy is enemy as long as he is alive. The moment he is dead, then you don't have to show disrespect to the dead body. And Indian army always follows this, but you see in the opposite, the Pakistanis, what they did, they do mutilation. They will slap, or they will using slipper, using their shoes. They will hit on the face. They will completely disfigure the dead soldiers. And if you get a dead body of an Indian, they will humiliate that dead body like anything. So this is a different culture. And as a civilized society, then we should follow the kind of culture that has been reflected in our itihasas and continue that tradition. That is what I would say. And of course, not only I just talked about focus a little bit on the military practices, but then every aspect of the this life, the human life, you have examples. The way Rama have, very easily, effortlessly, he has stick to the truth and refuse that material comfort, a material value that is going to come to him, like Yuvaraja. But ultimately, he sacrificed and it returned back to him. And then the last thing, like whether the Sita has to be protected, and some he can instead of sending her to the forest, he can do the other thing. It is equally possible. Like he can just give maybe send some messengers and give some clarity about that no, it is Sita has no fault. In fact, I will send it to the Valmiki. Entire exercise of Valmiki Ramana is just about that, because the primary objective of Valmiki to create this narrative about the Rama's life, because Valmiki's Ramayana is actually from ending up to the coronation of Sri Rama. So basically, he was focusing on the time period when Sita was in captivity, and how Sita behaved in the captivity of Ravana, and that she is innocent. So that is what the primary reason why Valmiki has authored the Valmiki Ramayana up to the coronation of Rama, and then it is spread through Sita's two sons, and then it is actually recited for Rama, but it is listening to the entire citizens, the same citizens who have doubted Sita. So this was also, I don't use, but in a way some PR exercise, but of course in a legitimate PR exercise by which the citizens can know the truth. That is what the Valmiki Ramayana is all about. But I
So,
think here also we can say that Rama was little bit aggressive. I mean, little bit sidestepped when he actually said like, no, we can do another pariksha,
Yeah.
Agni pariksha. Basically, what he was trying to tell is like, put some fire and then some using some magical ways in which you can ask it to enter into that, come out of it, like some magic, right? You know, the normal magic that you do to give a kind of a conviction to the citizens that she is pure. But Sita was not ready for that kind of a drama, right? He was ready for once, but again, second time it was asked, then she felt it is like humiliation.
Yeah.
She really felt it as a
I
humiliation.
think
She was not ready.
any pious woman
Yes,
would
yes.
feel that way, that I don't need to justify
Hmm.
myself again and again just because the other person is not willing to
Right, right. That's
understand it. So you are saying that basically, as Indians, Ramayana obviously is relevant for
yes.
us to understand that in this mad world, how we should keep our sanity, how
Right,
we should navigate the tough times, because
right,
we
right.
do not want to go back to the barbaric roots that the
Yes.
world seems to be going at, when we need to keep some sanity,
Right.
some level of dharma
Yes.
needs to be preserved for the proper evolution of this. Makes sense. Mr. Jijit, so to end, uh, apart from your book, which is obviously very detailed, what are some of the other books or references on the
Ah,
core Valmiki Ramayana
right, right. I
that
forgot
you
to
would
tell that. Yeah.
want people to know about? Because I want also them to read your book, and
Yes.
also if they want to go deep dive, they should
Right.
know what should look out for
Yes.
authentic.
So, being a kind of chronologist and the geographer, I cannot, no, it will be a kind of disaster for me to go with books like Ramacharita because it's
Yeah,
authored in 15th century.
yeah.
So, if you are of the similar nature where you have some very uh,
Scholarly
mm,
approach or an
scholarly approach,
academic approach. Yeah.
scholarly approach, academic approach, and I would also say detective approach.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I have approached the Valmiki Ramana as a detective.
As a detective, scientific
So
detective.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that kind of adapt to scientific approach, detective approach, and a scholarly approach, where you want to really know what actually is the geography inside the Rama's contemporary period. What actually is the chronology? Then you have to be focused on the critical edition of the Valmiki Ramayana, because every other edition will have some later information which is added in the much later period. So even critical edition have some later information, but we can navigate through it. So, for example, through my book, for example, my book Geography of Ramayana helps the reader to navigate through the later editions and the older version, the older parts inside the critical edition. But if you are actually following a regional version, then you are even more confused, and you will be having a mixture of whatever is extremely late and whatever extremely ancient. And if you are following Ramacharita, of course, if you are a devotee of Rama, then you can actually follow Ramacharita is more suitable for you,
Yeah.
because it actually polish Rama in a very very clean, with all the the rough ends are eliminated, and you will see a very kind of divine Rama, the
Yes.
avatar of Vishnu very prominently in the
Yes.
Ramacharita.